Chapter 26. Training Time. There was a long silence in the training room. After a long time, Hack recovered from the shock, but his expression was still complicated. A moment ago, he was talking about how difficult it is to awaken Haki. No matter how good the talent is, it will take a long time to control it. A few seconds later, Rhodes managed to awaken it. Rhodes looked at him innocently and said, "It seems, it's not that difficult. As soon as I closed my eyes, I sensed it, and with a little guidance, it came out naturally." Hack's whole body didn't feel well. He can see that it is the truth, but because it is the truth, it hurts his heart even more. "Next, I can finally practice Haki," Rhodes said. "Yes, you can." Hack's tone was a little heavy, and he suddenly felt powerless, because Rhodes' talent was just too strong, and he couldn't stand it. Next, Hack began to explain Haki in detail. He explained how to awaken Haki before, and now he is talking about how to master Haki. Hack never thought that the awakening of Haki and practicing it would be explained on the same day. Busashoku Haki is closely related to physical strength. The stronger the physique, the stronger the Busashoku Haki one cultivates. If the physique is weak, even if one practices the Busashoku Haki, it will be very weak. It's like the Kuja tribe on the Amazon Lily Island. On that island, all of the women are soldiers. Almost everyone can use Haki, but their physique is too weak. Even if they use the Busashoku Haki, the strength is still weak. Under normal circumstances, the best time to practice the Busashoku Haki should be when the physical training enters a slow period, and it is difficult to make a big breakthrough in a short period of time. But Rhodes is a little different. In just over 2 months, he has cultivated his physique to the threshold level. This kind of bond and rules mean nothing to him. He himself is an incomprehensible monster. So Hack didn't mention this. The strength of the Busashoku Haki varies from person to person and is closely related to the strength of the physique. Everyone is different, but there are still some divisions in the degree of control. Hack packed up his mood and explained in a detailed and steady manner. Practicing the Busashoku Haki to surround the weapon or fist increases the attack power. What you want is to attach it to the weapon or fist with a high density, this way it will harden it and make it stronger. This is the true mastery of the Busashoku Haki. As for going a step further, it is to cover every inch of the body's skin with the Busashoku Haki, so that the whole body is hardened, which is considered to be proficient. As he spoke, Hack demonstrated the state of each control level. However, what I want you to keep in mind is, the root of the Busashoku Haki is physical strength. If the strength is not enough, no matter how perfect the control is, it will not help. Rhodes nodded lightly, but these were pretty much what he had guessed. Hardening the whole body does not mean being strong. Just like Fergo, one of the top officials of the Doflamingo family, is a typical example. Although he can harden his body, he was still killed by Trafalgar Law. Physical strength is the foundation of a strong Busashoku Haki. Just like when Black Fist Lancelot was killed by Rhodes before, even when he used the Busashoku Haki on his chest, he was still pierced by Rhodes' sword because he is not strong enough. For you, as long as you implement some of the Busashoku Haki on your body, that should be enough. To focus on defense is an insult to a swordsman, Haku said. Rhodes nodded, showing approval. A swordsman, huh? Do you want to know what a swordsman is? He's a man with a sword in hand that can cut the world. That is what a swordsman should aim for. Perhaps it is not as hardy as a person with strong martial arts, nor as flashy as a devil fruit person, but there is also a different kind of romance in it, that is gorgeous and dangerous. Seeing Rhodes nodding, Hack showed a look of relief, and his tone became serious. Then, the next step is to officially start your Haki practice. You have to. A month later, the training room. Rhodes held the sword horizontally in front of him with one hand and stared intently at the sword body. The sword body was surrounded by strands of strange aura, invisible to the naked eye. But Rhodes could clearly sense it. This is the potential that anyone in the pirate world possesses, called Haki. In 1 month of practice, Rhodes not only grew a lot in terms of strength thanks to practicing Haki but also completely mastered its entry level of control. At this time, he is practicing his imbuement. Busashoku Haki, imbuement. With the movement of Rhodes' thoughts, the vein aura on the sword suddenly trembled, and then slowly surged, as if to condense together. But before these breaths were completely condensed together, and even before the bright black that was unique to the imbuement of the Busashoku Haki, it collapsed directly. Did it fail? Rhodes let out a light breath. Compared to the reservists of the same class, he was undoubtedly too far ahead. At the age of 17, he began to practice his Busashoku Haki. But when it comes to mastering Haki, he is still a freshman, and he has to explore and practice it step by step. Fortunately, the hack is extremely responsible and knowledgeable, and can basically solve any problem, so he did not encounter any bottlenecks, and his practice process was stable. Occasionally, when he performs well, he can imbue his blade, but it cannot last for a long time, and it easily collapses. This is an urgent problem to be solved. At the same time as he was Busashoku Haki, he was also working on his Kanbunshoku Haki. To be more precise, he didn't really need to practice at all, because the special state he felt before was actually the Kanbunshoku Haki, but it has not been developed and cannot be applied in actual combat. Under the guidance of Hack, Rhodes quickly mastered the use of the Kanbunshoku. This type of Haki is a sense of ability to capture the opponent's movements in order to attack or dodge in advance. The stronger the Kanbunshoku Haki, the more details are captured, and the larger and more sensitive the sensing range is. When you practice it to the extreme, you can even predict the future for a short period of time. When it comes to the ability of the time, even if it is just a little bit of power, it is always beyond the imagination of mortals, and it is difficult to discover. Rhodes' cultivation speed made Hack, who had been following him, feeling a bit complicated. In the beginning, Hack could still give some pointers. After all, he has practiced Haki for many years and he was very experienced. He has a unique approach to many applied skills. But Rhodes' learning speed was too fast, almost to the point of inferring other things that Hack never thought of, and it didn't take long before he finally was out of any more knowledge to share. Now, regarding Rhodes' practice, he already has an attitude of quietly watching you while pretending to be thoughtful. The way things went so far, Hack seemed to have already moved on and looked no longer surprised by Rhodes' sudden breakthroughs. Even if Rhodes suddenly comes to him now saying that he mastered hardening and imbuement, he wouldn't be surprised. At most, he will just raise one brow. Well, practicing Haki and using it in actual combat are two different things. Hack is still ready to help Rhodes in this regard. Chapter 27. The Awaited Gathering. Training Hall. Rez and other newly recruited reservists were chatting. In the blink of an eye, it's been almost 4 months since we became reservists. Time flies so fast. Speaking of time, it has been a month and a half since our last mission. Since then, there was no movement at all. Yeah, Rez, do you know when we will have another mission? Someone looked at Rez. Except for a certain monster who is almost beyond everyone's reach, Rez is the strongest in this newly recruited reservists group, and he is usually the first to hear any news. It should be almost graduation time. Rez took a sip and said. Reservists will not always stay reservists. Every once in a while, someone will become a regular. Once they're qualified and promoted to the main force, most of them will have higher treatment and status. This promotion is roughly equivalent to a captain in the Marines. Captain Shinoa, Captain Nia, and the others should all graduate this time. I don't know who will be given the vacated captain position, but Rhodes will definitely become the captain of the first team. Idiot, that monster Rhodes will definitely graduate early. With his strength, he won't stay a reservist for long. Cough, that's true. Rez couldn't help but laugh. Rhodes truly won't stay long, because if he does, the actual combat missions in the future would really be similar to playing a game. We're not at the same level anymore. Rez felt helpless. In the first Doroki test, he was confident that he could suppress Rhodes easily, but 1 month later, Rhodes' performance in the mission overwhelmed him. After another month, he couldn't even see his back, and he completely overthrew him. Thinking how he hasn't even learned how Soru yet, the gap is probably even bigger. Hey, why are the captains here? Someone suddenly said. Rez and the others turned to look. It was Shinoa, Nia, and the others. Under the leadership of Hack, they strode into the training hall. What's going on? Someone asked suspiciously. Except for going out on missions, the captains rarely gather together. To everyone's surprise, after the arrival of the captains, more and more big figures appeared on the scene. Intelligence Control Officer, Terry Giltio. Sabo is here too, and Koala. Hey, my god, isn't that the commander of the Northern Army, Karasu? The appearance of many cadres and senior cadres of the Revolutionary Army caused a commotion among the reservists, and their doubts became bigger and bigger. Who are those people? All of them look very strong. Rez and the others were secretly suspicious, because behind the commander of the Northern Army, Karasu, followed a dozen young men and women with extraordinary auras, looking at them maliciously. At this time, a figure that surprised all the reservists slowly walked out. The audience suddenly fell silent, and everyone looked at the middle-aged man in the dark green coat with an incomparable aura and presence. Leader. Leader. Hearing this title, there is no doubt that the identity of the person who came here is the founder and leader of the Revolutionary Army, Monkey D. Dragon. He's the man standing on top of the world. His status is as high as the status of the 4 emperors who are ruling the new world. The others cannot be underestimated too. It is difficult to guess their strength and no one knows their origins. They are the top leaders of the Revolutionary Army. There is almost no one who knows their identities and origins. The reservists couldn't help but feel suffocated in their presence. Especially Rez and the others, they have never even seen Dragon. Dragon didn't say a word, as if he was just here to observe the power of the new generation of the Revolutionary Army. This made the reservists calm down a little, and the young faces showed a bit of excitement. In silence, the dozen or so young men and women who followed Karasu seemed to be allowed to the middle of the field one after another, staring at Nia and the others, with a look of disdain. Not to be outdone, Shinoa and the other captains also stared back, gearing up for each other, thinking of teaching this group of bad guys a lesson. How arrogant, they're obviously here to make trouble. Someone muttered. Rez narrowed his eyes slightly, and suddenly remembered something, and said in a low voice. These people should be reservists from other bases. I'm afraid they are really here to make trouble. Rez had heard from Nia that if there are outstanding reservists trained in other bases, they will be gathered and head to the headquarters to battle with reservists trained here, and only winners will be promoted. If you perform well, you even have the opportunity to jump a few levels, and it is not impossible to become a Revolutionary Army cadre. After all, this is a world where the strong are respected, strength determines status, and the Revolutionary Army cannot be exempted from it. At this time, there was a young man in his 20s from the opposite camp that was the focus of everyone. He looked strong and had a scar on his forehead, standing like a giant bear. Western Army Reserve, SAS, please come forward. The young man cracked his neck proudly and walked forward, ignoring Shinoa and the others with his calm eyes. At the same time, the single-person training room. Armed color, hardening. In an instant, the jet-black Busashoku Haku rushed out, quickly attached to the arm, dyeing the skin of the arm into bright black, revealing a metal-like texture. Perfect. From the occasional realization of Busashoku Haki half a month ago to almost mastering hardening, Rhodes' learning speed is astounding. I want to try its power. Rhodes clenched his hands into fists and slammed the steel plate in front of him. Bang! The thick steel plate in front of him was pierced in an instant as if it was torn apart. It's about twice the attack power increase. Rhodes was slightly satisfied. Twice the increase in attack power may not have been a big deal a few months ago, but for Rhodes today, it is an extremely terrifying increase. If the current him were to fight against Black Fist again, I am afraid that with a single slash, he could be cut into 2 pieces, and there is absolutely no need to stab his heart. So far, a month and a half of practice have paid off handsomely. Haki is a power that is extremely suitable for everyone in this world. As long as you make a breakthrough, the strength will be directly improved, and the attack power and defense power will be directly enhanced. Not only that, Busashoku can give ordinary people the ability to fight against Logia users, which is a bit of a broken ability. Of course, Devil Fruit people can also practice Haki. Therefore, in the high-end battles of the pirate world, Haki is often a decisive force that can determine the outcome of the battle. In the past month and a half of training, in addition to the mastery of the Busashoku Haki, the physical strength has also steadily improved, but compared to the initial leap using the lightning forging, it has now slowed down a lot, and has gradually come to a relatively stable level. Rhodes didn't care about this, it was just a training method used during his sleep. Even if it's just a small improvement, he should be grateful that he can improve while others sleep. Chapter 28. A Microcosm of the Future. Level 2, the Book of Knowledge. Attributes, Intelligence +2, Wisdom +1. Talent. Swordsmanship Specialist, the combination of human and sword, the comprehension of swordsmanship is greatly improved. Thunder control, the rebirth of the god of thunder, you can freely control the power of thunder. Energy, 277/1000. The power of thunder is also stronger. Opening the attribute bar and taking a look, Rhodes smiled lightly. Practicing haki will also increase energy, which is a pleasant surprise. As for swordsmanship, its growth was temporarily stagnant. At the stage of the sword master, the effect of pure hard training is low, the only way to improve is through fighting stronger people. In order to make a breakthrough and improve your swordsmanship, you must seek temperament in the battle. However, the increase in physical strength in haki made the sword chi's power increase a lot. In general, Rhodes' combat power at this time, compared to before the practice of haki, can be said to be much stronger. Practicing haki is the entry ticket to the field of powerhouses, and the increase in strength is too great. Let's call it a day. It seems to be quite lively outside. Rhodes sheathed his sword, opened the door of the training room, and walked outside. The training hall. Crack. The two shadows were entangled together, and the fists and feet collided more than a dozen times in an instant. Every punch and every kick brought a roaring wind. Wherever they fought, the ground was shattered, leaving tiny cracks behind. This place is the training hall. The construction materials are naturally extremely tough. Usually, they wouldn't have too many problems while training here. No wonder the captains usually don't come to the training hall to practice. Someone muttered. I way far behind. After this test, I have to practice harder. Rez thought in his heart, hoping that the captain on his side would win, otherwise the reserve staff at the headquarters would be ashamed. Listening to the sound of ping, the two figures in the field suddenly separated, one person stood on the spot, and one person took 7 or 8 steps backward, swaying. Rez and the others took a close look, their eyes darkened, and the man who was barely standing was the captain of the 5th team. His body was trembling, and there was an evident trace of blood on the corner of his mouth. He took a deep breath, then said unwillingly, I admit defeat. The opponent's physical techniques are not much stronger than his, but their actual combat experience is not at the same level at all. It was just like a battle of a veteran versus a new recruit. He got completely crushed. Originally, he was thinking of being a blockbuster in front of the many high-level Revolutionary Army leaders present today, but he turned out to be a stepping stone for the other party. I didn't expect that the reservists at the headquarters are actually just some greenhouse flowers. You're nothing but brute force, you're no different from a reckless pirate on the sea. Sass's expression and voice were still calm, and he retreated after speaking. Shinoa, Nia, and the others all felt a little bit troubled. The headquarters is located in the New World, and there are fewer opportunities for actual combat. Unlike bases in other regions, it is easier to accumulate combat experience. After Sass stepped back, another figure walked out. This man looked like he was only in his early 20s, but his eyebrows were frowned like two swords and seemed extremely energetic. There was a sword hanging from his waist, which looked clearly like a famous swordsman. Eastern Army Reserve, Crow. The young man said lightly and seemed even more indifferent and fierce than Sass. I'm coming. Nia walked out slowly, holding an iron rod. You are not my opponent. Crow shook his head, looked at Shinoa, and said lightly, you are also a swordsman, step in, don't waste my time. In an instant, the audience fell silent. Everyone did not expect that this young man would call out for Shinoa. Nia frowned, a swordsman, she really is at a disadvantage, but she has already come out, and if she steps back now, it will really affect her reputation. You're scared. Nia held the iron rod and showed no signs of flinching. Since you want to lose, I will fulfill your wish. Humph. Nia snorted coldly, this was too arrogant, even with her temperament, she couldn't stand it. She moved suddenly, and rushed over, then smashed down with her iron rod. Clang clang clang. Sparks splashed everywhere, and the sound of gold and iron clashing exploded. The weapons of the two people on the field collided one after another. Nia exerted her strength and speed to the extreme, and her strikes were continuous, like a violent storm, to the point that the reservists could not see it clearly. Unexpectedly, Crow had a sword in one hand and one hand behind his back, and he took all of Nia's attacks with ease. Too slow. For a moment, Crow seemed to lose interest. He swung his sword away to attack, and then stepped forward, slamming the sword sideways, sending Nia flying out. Completely crushed. Nia knew that the other party had shown mercy, and although she was a little unwilling in her heart, she could only retreat. Damn, his strength is not as strong as Rhodes, yet he's more arrogant than Rhodes. If he were here, it will be strange if he doesn't beat you to death. Nia felt indignant in her heart. Aren't you going to take action yet? Crow stood with his sword, looked at Shinoa, and said, You should be Shinoa, the captain of the first team, don't waste any more time and step in. His tone was calm and stern as if he was talking about something irrelevant, and everyone could feel his confidence and arrogance from it. This guy has some strength, Sabo said with a low chuckle. Pride is either out of ignorance or from momentum accumulated through constant victories. The same is true for Sabo, but he has a milder personality and won't show it. Karasu, commander of the Northern Army, smiled and said, I heard about this little guy's story on the way here. He has challenged countless dojos. After winning all of them, it is normal for him to have such confidence. Most of the young swordsmen are like this. Koala laughed because she thought of a new reservist who also shocked the headquarters. Suddenly, she couldn't help but look forward to the scene when Rhodes shocks this audience. During this period of time, she stayed at the headquarters and watched the growth of these new reservists. She still favored the headquarters in this little clash. He's really arrogant. Rez and other reservists all clenched their fists and stared coldly at the enemy. But they were also shocked. In the past, there have never been so many young powerhouses on other bases. Not only are they numerous, but they are also stronger than the captains of the headquarters. The era when the strong are like clouds, maybe this is a preview. Rhodes, who just arrived here, couldn't help but whisper to himself, because he remembered what will happen next year, that turbulent era. There is a pirate group carrying a dream, starting from the East Blue and stirring the sea. Blackbeard, Ace, the largest war in history, the outbreak of the battle on the top, the end of the legend. A series of characters and events flooded into his mind, and Rhodes couldn't help but feel emotional. Hearing this voice, Rez and the others hurriedly looked back, and all of them suddenly showed joy. You're finally here. Those people are too arrogant. The reservists opened their mouths one after another, holding their grudges. Rhodes nodded slightly. From the situation on the field, he could easily distinguish the ins and outs of the matter. The only thing that surprised him was the appearance of Dragon. This is the first time he has seen him since coming to this world, a real existence at the peak of the world, whether it is strength or status. Chapter 29. The Strongest One. At this time, Shinoa was in a somewhat awkward situation. As the captain of the first team of the reserve force, and the strongest person on their side, Shinoa should be the final in line and should keep her composure. But she never expected that her teammates would lose so quickly, and could almost be said that they were destroyed. Currently, there were 2 battles and 2 defeats. If she loses, people will laugh at the performance of the HQ reserve force. At this moment, she noticed the movement from behind and quickly turned her head to look. At that moment she saw the scene she most wanted to see, or to be more precise the person she most wanted to see. It was Rhodes, who she had been looking forward to fighting for a long time was now her hero, standing calmly at the back of the queue, looking over here from a distance. Hi! Shinoa breathed a sigh of relief, took a step forward, and started her big duel with Crow. The only sound that could be heard is Kang. The 2 blades wrapped in violent power were colliding. The sparks splattered as the sound of gold and iron clashing frantically emitted. Shinoa's expression changed slightly, and she involuntarily took a few steps back, while Crow just shook his body. In terms of pure strength, Crow was clearly superior, and Shinoa's arm was numb. I have no choice but to use it. Shinoa breathed a sigh of relief, her eyes narrowed suddenly, urging some kind of power that she had just practiced to come out. Busashoku Haki. Imbuement. The dark color of the Busashoku Haki imbued her blade, with one side being black and the other white, revealing a cold sense of power. Nia and the other captains couldn't help but exclaim, showing excitement, this is Haki. No one would have imagined that just before graduation, Shinoa managed to master Busashoku Haki, and even learned how to use imbuement. Hack, who has been watching the battle, couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. If the headquarters reserve forces were completely defeated, his face as their instructor will be ashamed. Busashoku Haki? That's interesting. Looking at this scene, Crow nodded slightly. Sabo laughed in a low voice, although it's still a little unstable, it's not bad that she can use imbuement. Koala showed admiration. With this ability, Shinoa was qualified to become a Revolutionary Army cadre. Whoosh! The next moment, Shinoa rushed out, came to Crow, and slashed straight down with her black blade, as if it could cut everything off. Rez and the others all looked at this scene with burning eyes. As expected of the captain of the first team, the might of her sword could cut through steel. In the field, Crow stood there motionless, and when the blade approached, he smiled softly and slashed with his sword. He moved after Shinoa, but his blade came first. Clang! The two swords collided and large sparks exploded, but Shinoa was shocked and flew out. At that moment she couldn't even keep her grip on her sword. At this time, Crow had no intention to stop, instead, his body flashed, catching up with Shinoa's figure flying backward, and then kicked it out. Boom! Shinoa's body was blasted out by Crow and fell to the ground in the distance with a little embarrassment as she coughed blood. Shinoa reluctantly struggled to stand up, but she already lost the ability to fight. Moreover, as long as she's not a fool, she can clearly see by now that Crow has the absolute upper hand in terms of speed and strength, and she has no hope of winning. Even Captain Shinoa lost. That man could actually beat her haki, it's outrageous. The reservists present were all horrified. It was clear that Crow was about the same age as them, but he already possessed such repressive power, and easily defeated Captain Shinoa. The headquarters reserve force should be the strongest. Looking at Shinoa, who got up slowly, Crow did not continue to pursue, and said indifferently, "You reservists in the headquarters occupy the most resources, the most cutting-edge information, and the most complete training knowledge, but you're still weak, it's so disappointing." Nia and other reservists were furious when they heard these words, but they had nothing to say. Shinoa wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth, looked at the crowd behind him, and said with a smile, "I'm not the strongest in the headquarters reserve force." Oh! Crow raised a little interest and followed his gaze. The crowd spread out like a tide, revealing a young boy standing calmly. He doesn't look strong, he even looked a little thinner than most people, but he had a unique temperament, which is shocking. Is Rhodes going to take part? The reservists couldn't help but look forward to it. Although there are some people who are worried that Rhodes may not be able to win against Crow. But most people have full confidence in Rhodes. Since seeing Rhodes' amazing performance in actual combat missions, everyone has an inexplicable feeling that Rhodes will never lose no matter who he faces. "It's him," Sabo said in surprise. "Do you know him?" Koala looked at him strangely. It stands to reason that the two should not know each other. Sabo nodded and told her what happened in the restaurant a month and a half ago. "Oh? It's very him." Koala smiled, and said mysteriously, "Keep an eye on him, this guy can surprise you." Hearing this, even the commander of the Northern Army, Karasu, couldn't help but show a little curiosity. Koala is not weak, and her vision is regarded very highly. If she can say such words, I am afraid that this young man really has some qualities. A brave young man. At this moment, Dragon spoke abruptly, with a low and steady tone. This made all the cadres of the Revolutionary Army turn pale with shock. They did not expect that the leader would give such an evaluation to such a young man. Before now, neither Crow nor Shinoa and others could cause Dragon's expression to fluctuate, let alone give an evaluation. No one would doubt Dragon's vision. The cadres couldn't help but become curious and all looked in that direction. Under everyone's expectation, curiosity, disdain, or scrutiny, Rhodes' expression was still calm and indifferent, as if a breeze was blowing on his face. Such a calm and composed attitude gave all the Revolutionary Army cadres a good impression and secretly praised them. "Be careful." Shinoa looked at Rhodes, who was passing by, and reminded in a deep voice, "I feel that this guy still has some hidden trick under his sleeves." She didn't know how strong Rhodes was, but from the fact that he had dominated an entire battlefield just 2 months after he became a reservist, he should have definitely surpassed her in terms of strength. Moreover, when she was practicing haki, she had heard Hack mention Rhodes' practice process, and she knew that Rhodes had started practicing haki, and he could even display Busashoku haki occasionally. Now it's up to Rhodes to defeat Crow, otherwise, the entire headquarters reserve force, including Teacher Hack, will lose face. Chapter 30. Flowers and Green Leaves. The training hall of the headquarters was full of geniuses. Whether it is the defeated headquarters reserve force captains, or the opponents, Crow, Sass, and the others, are essentially geniuses. They all have monster-like strength at a young age. Green leaves should always get rid of so that flowers can show off their uniqueness. Aside, Hack watched Rhodes slowly appear and smiled. In the beginning, he was also amazed that so many young and strong men came out of other bases and secretly felt guilty for the defeat of the reserve force captains at the headquarters. But when he saw Rhodes appear, he suddenly realized something. Of course, there are many young people worth mentioning from other bases, but it is almost impossible for these people to truly reach the peak of the sea, and they might even fail to become one of the future Cotters. But Rhodes is different. Hack saw all of Rhodes' growth process. During just 4 months, he mastered the Thunder Sword Intent, Soru, Jeppo, and the Busashoku Haki. Learning this series of incomparably powerful abilities, at this age, ordinary people would be proud if they've learned even one of these abilities in such a short period, but Rhodes mastered them all. This terrifying growth rate gave him a bold idea. Perhaps, Rhodes may become a true pinnacle figure such as the Admiral of the Marines, or the Yonko, and stand on the top of the world. At least his potential is absolutely enough. Hack was convinced of this. Is there a stronger reserve force reservist at the headquarters? The reservists at other bases all looked at Rhodes, who came out with strange expressions. However, although Rhodes' appearance is very eye-catching, the performance of the headquarters reservists was really poor, so the audience is still full of confidence in Crow, and no one thinks that anyone can beat him. You are the strongest one. With a hint of inquiry and scrutiny in his tone, Crow asked curiously, since you are the strongest, why aren't you the captain of the first team? Before he came, he had learned about the situation of the reserve force at the headquarters, which is divided into 10 teams. Generally speaking, the captain of the first team was the strongest. I only joined the reserve force a while ago. In this regard, there is nothing to hide, Rhodes was very calm. As soon as he said this, the whole place fell silent. All those who didn't know the truth couldn't help but show a little disbelief. As for the answer to Crow's question, they had some guesses before they heard Rhodes' reply. They thought that he didn't like being the captain because he wanted to act alone. This can be seen from Rhodes' late appearance. Unexpectedly, he turned out to be a newly promoted reservist. Judging by the period they usually recruit new reservists, Rhodes should have only been in the reserve force for only 4 months at most. He shouldn't be lying, but in this situation, who would dare to lie? Everyone on the opposite side looked at Rhodes with extremely suspicious eyes. He's a new reservist. Karasu, commander of the Northern Army, couldn't help but look at Koala. Well, that's true, Kurlaw said. Then how old is he? Sabo asked. 17, 2 years younger than you. Noticing their surprised and inexplicable expressions, Koala wanted to laugh a little. Even Dragon looked a bit surprised. Youth represents potential. If Rhodes is really this respected at the headquarters reserve force at this age, then the future will be a bit difficult to estimate. In the field. Interesting. Hearing Rhodes' answer, Crow's expression froze, and he laughed lowly. Since that's the case, let's see what you have. Take the first move, you won't have another chance, Rhodes said calmly. His expression was also indifferent, as if he was not facing a powerful enemy that swept the reserve force captains at the headquarters. He seemed like he was going to point out an arrogant junior. That attitude was very similar to Crow's previous attitude towards Nia. Humph! Crow snorted coldly and suddenly slashed down with a sword. Scoff! The turquoise sword chi was wrapped in a frightening chill, tore through the air, and cut towards Rhodes. Before the sword chi reached him, a faint stinging pain could be felt on his face. Looking at this scene, Rhodes lightly held the hilt of the sword with his right hand, and then suddenly drew his blade. A simple and unpretentious slash, but with Rhodes' power, the reservists only saw a sharp cut like a flash. Scoff! In the next instant, the turquoise sword energy suddenly exploded, dissipating invisibly, and the rolling wind blew Rhodes' hair and clothes. Rhodes took care of this sword chi so easily, which made Crow's expression suddenly change, stopped his underestimation, and started to look at him solemnly. The sword chi just now had a haki aura attached to it. Soru! Crow's eyes sank, and the whole person turned into an afterimage. When he reappeared, he was facing Rhodes' back, and the blade imbued with haki slashed down sharply, as if to cut Rhodes into 2 pieces. But at this moment, Rhodes turned around as if he had eyes on the back of his head, and with a light sword, he blocked Crow's surprise attack. What? Seeing this, Crow's heart trembled, but he quickly responded. His right foot suddenly swiveled, and with the help of his waist, his left foot slammed into the air like a dragon swinging its tail. This is the Rankyaku one of the Marines' Rokushiki, which can be used to kick out a slash no less weak than a sword. Wow! The people watching the battle couldn't help but exclaim. No one expected that Crow was so good at physical techniques in addition to his swordsmanship. Such a close-up of Rankyaku burst out, and his blade was still caught, making it impossible to defend. In the blink of an eye, Rhodes seemed to be in a pinch situation, and he would lose at any moment. As expected. Rhodes muttered to himself, and with his bare left hand, he suddenly clenched his fist and slammed the Rankyaku. Are you trying to block the Rankyaku with your bare hands? Does he want to die? Someone shouted. However, in the next instant, everyone was left shocked. His clenched fist suddenly became dark and shiny, and the high-density black color was attached to it as if it was stained with ink. Boom! As if he punched the glass, the Rankyaku was instantly shattered by Rhodes' punch. At the same time, Rhodes made use of this stagnation in Crow's movement and waved his blade, and then raised it to the roof ready to strike Crow down. Scoff! The light blue thunder sword chi ripped through the air and slashed towards Crow. Soru! Crow's mastery of the Rokushiki was obviously extremely skilled. He stumped the ground hard with his feet and tried to open the distance, but the speed of the thunder sword chi was too fast to avoid from the range. One style sword, thunder. Rhodes took a deep breath, held the sword tightly in both hands, and slammed it out. There was an extremely sharp tearing sound in the air. The speed of this sword energy was close to the speed of sound. Boom! The thunder sword chi and Crow's blade collided together. The force generated pushed Crow to slide back a full 7 or 8 meters before it finally collapsed, and then splashed in all directions. However, before Crow could breathe a sigh of relief, his expression suddenly changed. Chapter 31. Insurmountable. The situation of the battle was changing rapidly, and Rhodes' strength did not disappoint Hack and the others. Track, prick, prick. There was an infinite current surging out, the electric arc swam like a silver snake, and the terrifying lightning evidently overwhelmed Crow. Ah! In the dazzling thunder, there were bursts of shrill screaming, with a slight vibrato, and the reservists felt their scalps go numb just by standing far away. This just shows how terrifying the power of thunder that Rhodes was generating. Who would have thought that Rhodes would have such power? Such a powerful lightning force, is it some kind of a devil fruit? The commander of the Northern Army, Karasu, frowned slightly. He asked that because he didn't think it was a Logia type of thunder devil fruit because Rhodes' tactics were completely incompatible with those with the ability of the Logia. No, it's thunder sword intent. Looking at the thunderbolt in the distance, Koala said. Can sword intent achieve such a level? Karasu was very puzzled. However, such things as sword intent are extremely mysterious and undiscovered by a lot of people in this world, so it is difficult to study. Because the sword intents of all swordsmen are different, it is almost impossible to copy the composition of each person's experience, realm soul, and understanding of Ken. Sabo was slightly attentive, showing a hint of interest. No wonder this young man had the courage to challenge him. Busashoku Haki, thunder sword intent. But this level is not enough. He chuckled in a low voice. Thunder. Sword intent. Dragon blinked, and a little excitement flashed deep in his eyes. Compared with the world government, the Revolutionary Army is still too immature, and it only has a few decades of history under its belt. Even though he is brilliant, was literally gifted with the entire IQs of the monkey family, and had his hands on some resources, he was still a bit short. So far, Sabo is the only one who has grown up enough to be able to face the world government side by side with him in the future. This lineup is really too thin. Of course, there are still many hidden powers in the Revolutionary Army, but the world of pirates is all about power, and the main strategy is to become a peak powerhouse. At this time, under the extremely nervous gaze of everyone in the field. Roar! An earth-shattering roar suddenly came out from the thunderous lightning gathering like a storm around Rhodes' body. It seemed that the end was near for a moment as thunder rumbled in the training hall. Inside the lightning, a monster suddenly appeared. The monster incarnated by Crow directly broke through the shackles of lightning and rushed out of the storm. Zoan Devil Fruit. It should be some kind of cat. Rhodes was a little surprised, this was the first time he encountered a devil fruit person. I didn't intend to use it. But I really didn't expect that I would be forced to this extent. Crow, who rushed out of the lightning force field, exhaled a scorching breath, mixed with some subtle arcs. At this time, he was in a state of half-beast transformation, his muscles swelled, and he was filled with an extremely tyrannical bursting power. It seemed as if he could shatter mountains with one punch. At the same time, there was a ferocious aura that pervaded the reservists, causing them to concentrate in secret. Their brows tingled, they had to because they were facing some kind of high-level predator. The only fly in the ointment was that his body was slightly charred, and his body was still trembling, and it was obvious that he had been severely electrocuted. Since I end up using my devil fruit ability, this battle should be over. Whoosh! The moment his voice emitted, Crow's figure disappeared. The speed was more than twice as fast as before. Even the captains like Nia couldn't react in time. This basic speed, coupled with his slightly stronger physical technique, made Crow even faster than Rhodes. But even though Crow was extremely fast, he was unable to attack Rhodes in this stormy confrontation. Instead, several times in a row, Crow was barely dodging Rhodes' blade, until he failed to dodge and his shoulder was cut by Rhodes' sword energy, which was a deep blood stain. The sharp sound of breaking through the air was incessant, and the sound of gold and iron clashing became more and more frequent. The reservists couldn't even catch the two figures in the battle, they could only see two shadows clashing against each other, while sparks flew everywhere. However, what they could tell from where they were standing is that Rhodes was the one at a disadvantage, because Crow's attack frequency is higher, and he obviously has the upper hand. However, when Crow retreated into the distance, people discovered that this was not the case, because Crow had many sword marks on his body, while Rhodes had no scars at all. "You're fast enough, but it's far from enough to defeat me." Rhodes stood with a sword in his hand and a leisurely demeanor. Perhaps his movement speed at this time is not as fast as the half-beast like Crow, but his neural reaction speed is more than one step ahead of Crow due to the activation of the Thunder mode. In this way, while using the Kanbunshoku Haki, it was impossible for Crow to hurt him at all. What's going on? The reservists were all puzzled, they couldn't understand what was happening on the battlefield. Kanbunshoku. Shinoa's eyes flashed, and couldn't help but smile. He even knows how to use Kanbunshoku. The potential ceiling was raised once again, and Karasu and the other Revolutionary Army cadres did not know how to evaluate it. His learning speed is monstrous. Koala, who felt that she knew Rhodes the most, couldn't help but shake her head. She thought that Rhodes had only learned the Busashoku Haki in the past 2 months. But she didn't expect that he even managed to master the Kanbunshoku Haki in the same period. Hi! In the field, Crow sighed and said convincingly, "I admit defeat." The audience might not know, but he was very clear that during their fight just now Rhodes was not serious at all, and he always kept his guiding attitude. Otherwise, he would have been defeated long ago. After all, he can barely use the Busashoku Haki during battle, and he still didn't learn how to use the Kanbunshoku. The gap brought by this cannot be filled by a devil fruit ability. What about the rest? Rhodes glanced at the rest of the reservists from the sub-base with indifferent eyes. Obviously, they didn't want to accept this outcome, but they had no choice but to bow their heads and admit their defeat. Crow is the strongest among them, and being able to defeat Crow without breaking a sweat undoubtedly makes him the strongest in the reserve. They never knew that there was such a monster headquarters base. No one would dare to provoke Rhodes after he shows such strength. From the beginning to the end, the wind was light and the clouds were calm. In the battle against the monster Crow, he didn't suffer the slightest injury, not even a touch. This gap can no longer be filled by quantity. This one person alone is enough to support the entire headquarters reserve force, no one dares to underestimate his power. One person managed to suppress the power of an entire army. Looking at this scene, Nia, Shinoa, and the other reservists couldn't help but show their excitement and pride. Crow is strong, but Rhodes is stronger. Sure enough, no one can defeat this monster. In the field, the one with the most complicated emotions was Rez. He shook his head and laughed, "This completely destroys my confidence in chasing after you." Before this was full of confidence that as long as he makes a big step ahead, there is still hope. But at this time Rhodes in front of him seemed like a sacred mountain, insurmountable, and completely out of his vision. This is just amazing. Chapter 32. Rhodes' Free Will. Headquarters Castle, the highest level. The senior leaders of the Revolutionary Army gathered together and were analyzing the situation in the sea. Under Dragon's intentional training, Sabo, who has not yet stepped into the high level, was still fortunate to sit in. As for Koala, she was not eligible for the time being. The Yonko in the New World has been established, and the Marines has retreated. The high amount of gold in the sky has caused many countries to suffer. Under these circumstances, our revolutionary ideas have been highly recognized, and many countries have been secretly contacting us. The weapons trade in the black market is monopolized by clowns, and we have encountered a lot of trouble while making our moves due to that. Dragon listened carefully, occasionally expressed his views on certain subjects, and most of the time he remained silent. Since the development of the Revolutionary Army, a relatively complete system has been established within the organization. Under the control of each layer, he, the leader, only needs to control the general direction and make the major decisions, and he does not need to pay attention to everything. After a long time, this sea will soon be in chaos. If you want to overthrow such a behemoth as the world government, you will only find your way to death if you act rashly. Forbearance and tolerance are the most important things. Has the list of graduates from the reserve force been sorted out? The intelligence control officer, Giltio said, the graduated reservists, such as Nia, Sass, and the others, will be allocated according to their previous distribution principles. Dragon nodded slightly. Nia and the others are relatively normal reservists. Their strength is good, but they aren't out of the ordinary. They still need to hone their skills before they can become Revolutionary Army cadres. They lack a lot in terms of strength or experience. As for Shinoa, Crow, and Rhodes, all of them are strong enough and learned Haki during their time as reservists. According to the rules, they can directly conduct cadre assessment. After speaking, Giltio was silent for a while and suddenly said, "Leader, I think that due to Rhodes' young age, he should stay at the headquarters and continue his training." As soon as these words came out, Karasu and the other cadres nodded. They all watched the last exchange battle. At this age, he's really strong. With this kind of potential, he's really possible to become one of the strongest soldiers of the Revolutionary Army in the future. He's fated to be one of the supporting pillars of this organization. It can even be said that although Rhodes did not have a position at this time, and was only a reservist, in the eyes of Giltio, Karasu, and the others, he was more important than some of the senior cadres. He represents the future. In the Marines, once a strong individual emerges, the Garosei evaluate his worth seriously, and based on the situation they act, either to eliminate him or keep him as a loyal servant. The Revolutionary Army is completely different in this aspect because they lack such strong people. For example, when Sabo just showed his extraordinary talent, he was directly accepted by the leader Dragon as a disciple. Hearing Gilto's suggestion, Dragon pondered slightly. Rhodes and Sabo are different. Sabo was personally taught by him very early on. Whether it is the character, ability, or combat effectiveness, he's truly remarkable. However, Rhodes grew up in Baltigo since he was a child. He has never seen the big world. He's very strong at a young age, and I am afraid he will easily become arrogant. With such a character, on this mysterious sea where you can even find the dungeons of ancient dragons, it is easy to run into a wall and end up dead on a deserted island. Besides, at the age of 17, he's indeed a little younger. Sabo was already 18 when he went out on a mission alone. But as one of the peak powerhouses in this sea, Dragon understands very well that it is impossible to become a real powerhouse just by practicing. After thinking for a long time, Dragon suddenly shook his head and said with a smile, "Let him decide on his own." To be able to comprehend such a powerful thunder sword intent at such a young age, his will is probably very strong, and he has his own ideas. Such a person won't accept to be chained by old people like us. As soon as he said this, Karasu and the others were stunned for a moment, and then couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. This was because they were negligent, and regarded Rhodes as a young kid, and even Giltio might think that Rhodes was just a child, and he's subconsciously trying to shelter him. Even though training at the headquarters can steadily improve your strength, you will always stay as a young bird that cannot fly. Only by conquering the sky and experiencing life and death, you can grow into an eagle soaring in the blue sky freely. The strong never fear battle. Dragon's tone was filled with an extremely restrained domineering. After becoming the leader of the Revolutionary Army, Dragon rarely won, but no one would doubt his strength and knowledge. On the side, Sabo looked at this scene and couldn't help but sigh. So many senior leaders of the Revolutionary Army gathered together, but they were arguing over a teenager. This is a treatment that even he didn't have. It seems that I have to practice harder, otherwise I will be embarrassed when he surpasses me. Having said that, Sabo was still full of confidence. He firmly believes that his talent and hard work are not inferior to others. He will never be surpassed by the rising star Rhodes. The training hall. Hack found Rhodes, explained his purpose, and looked at him with a slightly complicated look. He's the fastest one to graduate among all the reservists he has taught in his life. In less than half a year, he has surpassed literally everyone. Of course, I choose to graduate. Rhodes said without hesitation. The things that should be learned have already been learned during his time as a reservist, and it is meaningless to stay here. Next year is the one that will bring chaos to the sea. Gods know what will change, who will emerge, and who will conquer the world. If he stays at the headquarters, I am afraid that it will not be long before he will be eliminated by the time. He is eager to get out, fight, and stand on top of the world. Hack looked at Rhodes' sharp eyes, knowing that his students could not be shaken, thus he sighed softly, since you have made up your mind, I will not persuade you. But I hope you remember that the outside world is different from here, and all crises must be faced and solved by you alone. You must not act recklessly. No matter where you are, you must remember that your life is the most important thing. It should be noted that the one who has the last laugh is the real winner. His tone was extremely sincere, and judging by his attitude he really considered Rhodes as his own child. Rhodes nodded earnestly, expressing his understanding. Hack is a true martial artist. He never hides his secrets. He also tried his best to teach Rhodes and gave him the perfect guidance in all aspects. Sometimes, he even went to other Revolutionary Army cadres to ask for advice about Rhodes' problems to ensure that every problem was solved in the best possible way. He didn't know anything about swordsmanship himself, so he also found a scroll inside the Revolutionary Army and gave it to Rhodes to practice. When Rhodes started practicing haki, he even went into battle in person and practiced against Rhodes. In teaching, he has done his best. Rhodes has always been grateful for his kindness and vengeance, and he will always remember these things in his heart. Chapter 33. Arrival. Is Rhodes still going to graduate after all? Listening to the conversation between Rhodes and Hack, Rez and the others were left in a bit of disbelief. Although they knew that Rhodes have already surpassed them, they always felt that they should graduate together since they joined the reserve force at the same time. In the future, the gap between us and him will only get bigger and bigger. Someone said. Others may suspect that Rhodes will encounter setbacks after going to sea, or even die prematurely, but his peers have an inexplicable feeling that he will only sing all the way up until he overlooks the sea. At this moment, Crow walked over and said, "When I master haki, I will come to fight you again." He felt that when he lost to Rhodes, it only happened because of haki, because his superhuman speed and strength should be levels above him. Oh! Rhodes nodded calmly. Just like Shinoa, after being surpassed by Rhodes, the gap will only get bigger and bigger, because Rhodes will never stop to look at his back. Besides, this Crow's practice methods are too complicated. He is a fellow practitioner of martial arts and swordsmanship, and he has devil fruit abilities. He may be very strong at present, but if it continues like this, Shinoa may even surpass him. Only by focusing on one style can we reach the peak. Although Rhodes has the divine artifact, the Book of Knowledge, swordsmanship has always been the core, with the rest of his abilities as auxiliary. The task of cadre assessment is designated by the senior management. Missions are usually complex and will test many abilities, not just combat effectiveness. There are many things that cannot be solved by pure force alone. Certainly. This refers to a force that is not strong enough. If you're as strong as an admiral, almost all tasks can be done with brutal force. No matter when and where, combat power is always the most critical and core element. This is how this world works. After 3 days of trekking, Rhodes, Sabo, and Koala rushed to the coastline and set out to sea by boat. Your mission is to kill the head of an underground intelligence organization, the Silver Fox Crete. This person has committed a taboo in selling intelligence and must be killed to set an example. It should be noted that this person is extremely good at camouflage, concealment, disguise, etc., and has a keen sense of smell. If you miss the first shot, it may lead to the failure of the mission. These are the deeds of the Crete, and a few other related materials, you can take a look. Koala introduced the mission to Rhodes and handed him a document at the same time. The two of them didn't specifically accompany Rhodes on the mission, they just dropped by. If Rhodes can successfully complete the task and become a cadre of the Revolutionary Army, he will work with them to do another task that just needs young people like Rhodes. Okay. Rhodes took the information and looked at it. With his almost unforgettable memory, he quickly memorized all information in his mind, and gradually started making a plan. Silver Fox Crete's strength is not strong, nor the most famous, and his bounty is just 120 million. This time, it was Crete who provoked the Revolutionary Army. Under the intelligence network of the Revolutionary Army all over the world, he was quickly located. Rhodes' task is actually very simple: go to the island and kill Crete. It's just that this person is good at disguising, so he may not be able to find the real person. If he is alerted and disguised in the crowd, the difficulty of the task will be greatly increased, and he might even fail. Do you think he can complete the task? Koala asked Sabo. Sabo blinked, pondered for a moment, and said, this task is still a bit difficult. Let's not mention finding the silver fox himself. Even if he's found, he will be difficult to deal with. The implication is that Sabo is obviously not optimistic about Rhodes. People who are a little stronger in the pirate world become a bit harder to kill, not to mention intelligence dealers like Silver Fox who roam in the underground world. His survival and escaping skills are estimated to be at full level, which makes him harder to kill. After a week of sailing, the sailboat finally arrived at its destination. This is not a big island, but it looks very prosperous. There are many ships docked in the port, including ordinary merchant ships and pirate ships, but they stay together harmoniously and do not offend each other. Because this is an island under the protection of one of the Yonko, the Whitebeard. A legend that ruled for 2 eras, his name alone is enough to end and stop a war. Although the New World is full of lawless fanatics, few people dare to provoke the Whitebeard. The sailboat gradually came to shore. Seeing the people coming and going at the port, Rhodes couldn't help but show a little excitement. Although the sea is vast, it is too monotonous. Besides, this is also his first contact with the outside world. Looking at the scene of people coming and going on the port, there were even some strange creatures that were obviously not human. Rhodes' eyes widened, and his heart could not help but fluctuate a little. Rhodes was a human after all, but he quickly calmed down. Then, he saw a slightly familiar figure. It's not that he took a fancy to him at a glance in the crowd. But this person was acting very arrogantly, walking in the forefront of a large group of fierce pirates, looking for trouble, but everyone in the port looked afraid of him, and they didn't dare to offend him. Maelstrom Spider, Squard. Rhodes was stunned for a moment, and then he showed an interesting look. He was that backstabber. At such an important moment in the war, under the deception of Akainu, he stabbed Whitebeard with his blade, which weakened the strength of the latter, who was already covered in injuries and almost indirectly led to Whitebeard's death in battle. The man who betrayed his father. But this was Whitebeard's family affair and it has nothing to do with Rhodes. At this time, he remembered what Koala said, you must keep a low profile, this is the territory of the Whitebeard pirates after all. After completing the task, call us and we will pick you up and leave. It is good. Rhodes nodded, got off the sailboat, and walked towards the island along the road paved with blue bricks. Rhodes was a little surprised by everything he saw along the way. This was a side he couldn't see on the screen in his previous life, the real scene of the world of pirates. I need to complete the task first. Rhodes walked down the street, turned left and right, and quickly connected with the head of the Revolutionary Army here. The mission is to kill the Silver Fox. This cunning guy is not easy to deal with, he once killed a big pirate with a reward of over 100 million. The head of the Revolutionary Army looked at Rhodes in front of him and couldn't help but show a hint of surprise. Rhodes was too young. Although the identity proof is correct, it is a little hard to believe. Stop staring at me and just give me the latest information on the Silver Fox, Rhodes said. Young people are really angry. The person in charge shook his head and took out a document from the drawer. Rhodes took the information, glanced at it, and walked out. Don't you need help? No, before he could finish speaking, Rhodes' figure had already disappeared. Tisk tisk, whoever gave him this mission knows very well that it's one level higher in difficulty than the usual cadre assessment task. The person in charge took a cigar, pondered for a while, and decided to take care of it. Such a young man with unlimited talent and potential, if he doesn't make friends sooner, he won't have a chance in the future. Chapter 34. The Assassination. In the town. Rhodes didn't rush into trouble with the Silver Fox, but wandered the streets casually, getting familiar with the terrain. With a memory far beyond ordinary people, he quickly formed a simple map of the town in his mind. The power of thunder is not the same as the Goro Goro no Mi. I can read the electric waves, so the only choice I have is to strengthen my Kanbunshoku Haki, otherwise, it will be so troublesome here. Rhodes curled his lips. If he develops a technique similar to reading electromagnetic waves, even if his perceptual can't cover the entire island, it's not too bad. It also has a monitoring effect, so it would have been impossible for the silver fox to escape from his palm. It seemed I should go to the Skypiea as soon as I have the chance. But I am afraid that killing Enel, who considers himself a god, would be easier than making him give me the secrets of his techniques. While thinking about it, Rhodes walked to the location of the silver fox. The leader of the Revolutionary Army followed behind, watching Rhodes' actions, and couldn't help but be at a loss. At first, he thought that Rhodes was getting familiar with the terrain, but in less than 2 hours, Rhodes was done. This kid isn't playing around, right? The person in charge murmured to himself, feeling that Rhodes was a little unreliable because he was actually eating ice cream at this time. A dark space. A group of people in black gathered together and were discussing something. Lord Crete, Squard asked for a higher protection fee to keep us on the island. Give it to him. From a dark corner, a slightly hoarse voice emitted. It was a tall and thin figure, he didn't have a strong aura, and looked like an ordinary person. But all the men in black didn't dare to be disrespectful at all, because they all knew the cruelty and moodiness of the silver fox. No one knows the origin of the silver fox, and people who inquired are dead. They only know that the intelligence organization he built by himself can even compete with the dark emperors of the underground world. Da-da-da. At this moment, there was a sudden sound of very steady footsteps at the entrance. The owner of the footsteps did not seem to be walking in the gloomy underground passage but was out walking leisurely and comfortably in the spring. An outsider, said a man in black. The people in the intelligence organization are all professionally trained and they all walk very lightly. These distinct footsteps can be distinguished instantly by these professional agents. However, they looked at each other in disbelief, because there are many traps outside, and it is usually impossible for anyone to approach this level without triggering the alarm. You guessed it right. I'll reward you with a slash. Accompanied by the faint voice, lightning flickered, and the dazzling light illuminated the space. Scoff. The sword energy swept across, directly slicing this underground space in half, and an infinite current swept out, attacking everyone present. The man in black avoided the direct attack of the sword energy, but could not avoid the lightning that followed. Rhodes' current thunder power is strong enough to even kill the reserve force captains. These men in black with mediocre strength couldn't bear it at all. They were all stunned by the lightning, and their hair stood on end. In the not-so-wide space, the lightning flashed dazzlingly, and at the same time, there was a faint smell of burning. With one slash, the men in black were almost wiped out. Said to be almost wiped out because, at the other end of the space, a figure smashed through the wall, and rushed out before the electric current erupted. The response is quite fast. Using the Kanbunshoku Haki to sense this guy, Rhodes quickly chased after him. His speed was extremely fast, and he disappeared out of thin air with a flash of lightning. Boom! Using Soru, Rhodes chased after the man in black to the hall. Silver Fox rushed to the hall, looked around, and saw the bodies of men in black everywhere. They seemed to be killed in an instant. With an ignorant look on his face, Silver Fox looked at his fellow comrades. He should be a speed-type enemy, I'm afraid it's hard to get away and escape. Silver Fox's expression sank, but he didn't panic, because he often encountered such situations and had rich experience in dealing with them. The Dark Line should have contacted Squard, and reinforcements will arrive soon. In the past, Silver Fox considered this situation and prepared for it beforehand. Not only did he arrange multiple lines of defense in the base, but also positioned manned personnel in some inconspicuous places on the periphery of the base, so that when an accident occurs at the base, they will immediately contact reinforcements. This island was under the protection of the Whitebeard pirates. Of course, he has long been on good terms with Squard, and he can ask him for help if necessary. The next moment, a thunderous sword chi burst into the air, tearing apart the ground, and emitting a sharp whistling sound. Having seen Rhodes' sword chi power in the basement, the Silver Fox didn't dare to take it head-on. He quickly evaded, performed some kind of a smoke explosive technique, and disappeared in place. But before he could completely escape, a figure appeared behind him and slashed down with a sword. Kang! Fortunately, Silver Fox's knowledge and skills are not bad. He predicted Rhodes' attack in advance, raised his sword, and blocked it, and the sound of gold and iron symphony exploded. The violent power erupted, and the Silver Fox was completely overwhelmed, and was blasted out, smashed through the wall, and slammed on the street outside, smashing a deep pothole. Get out of here quickly! There are strong people fighting. The passers-by were very experienced, and quickly backed away and hid at a far distance to watch. It's the Silver Fox. When the leader of the Revolutionary Army saw the flying figure, he couldn't help but feel stunned. That young man's strength was so powerful. He only stood here outside for less than 5 minutes to observe the situation, but it was already over inside. But this is the Whitebeard Pirates' Island. If you don't solve the Silver Fox quickly, you will be in trouble when the Whitebeard Pirates arrive. He whispered. He was not allowed to help with the assessment task. He already crossed the line by coming here to look after Rhodes. Right now, it depends on whether Rhodes can kill the Silver Fox quickly, otherwise, he will intervene to help Rhodes escape. On the street at this time. Clang clang clang. The blades collided, and the two swordsmen clashed a dozen times instantly. The aftershocks of the sword chi ripped apart the ground and swept across all directions, forcing passers-by to retreat. As one of the famous masters in the underground world, Silver Fox was an extremely skillful haki user, and mastered the hardening technique to the fullest, while his Kanbunshoku haki also being way better than Rhodes. What a pity! Under the unbridled charge of Rhodes, the Silver Fox soon encountered a pinch. Because his body was affected by the violent power of lightning, his flexibility began to decline, and his muscles felt a little paralyzed. He was still standing there only because of his strong physique and astonishing resistance, otherwise, he would have been electrocuted into a mentally retarded man already. Who are you? Why do you want to kill me? Who sent you here? Silver Fox fought and retreated, trying to deceive Rhodes with words. However, Rhodes simply ignored him and slashed wildly with his sword. This is different from the sparring battle at the headquarters. He no longer has to worry about the opponent's life, and can unscrupulously release his power. This kind of unrestrained battle is really cool. Chapter 35. Squard. Haki, as a force in the world of pirates, has a great impact on combat. Bushoshoku haki directly strengthens offense and defense, and with Kanbunshoku haki you can predict the enemy attacks. Silver Fox was clearly behind Rhodes in both strength and speed, but with his slightly stronger Kanbunshoku haki, he took Rhodes' attacks head-on and parried them one by one. However, it's true that if this continues he will lose. If the battle continues, Silver Fox will definitely lose, but he didn't plan to experience a life-and-death battle with Rhodes. He just needed to buy time until the arrival of the Whitebeard pirates. But as the battle progressed, Silver Fox gradually felt powerless, and his body couldn't keep up with Rhodes' fierce movements anymore. Damn it! It's because of his damn lightning. Silver Fox started to get anxious. The more he dared to confront Rhodes with the sword, the weaker he got because of the lightning parallelization effect. The speed of the two is extremely fast. In the eyes of most people, they can only see two black shadows flashing alternately, and from time to time they will be separated for a second, then once again clash, causing a circle of invisible airwaves to explode. Occasionally, a sword chi flew out of the sky, tearing apart the earth and destroying the house. The terrifying power was heart-pounding. That young man looked only 17 or 18 years old, but he's powerful enough to force the other guy to fight. But the people from the Whitebeard pirates are about to arrive. If you dare to make trouble on their territory, those monsters won't turn a blind eye. It looks like this battle is going to be anticlimactic. People were talking casually during this battle. The pirate world advocates force and the battle between the strong is the most exciting to watch. At this moment, on the battlefield, an accident happened suddenly. The Silver Fox finally could not bear the parallelization effect anymore, his legs and feet stopped moving, and his movement looked more sluggish. With the speed and reaction of the two of them, this little accident was enough to kill. Scoff! The blade cut through the air, like a drill, targeting the Silver Fox's head. With the current level of the Silver Fox's Busoshoku haki, he can't block Rhodes' slash. Ah! Move me! Move! Silver Fox's eyes were blood red, he urged all his strength, exploding his potential, and finally, at the critical moment, his body moved sideways a little. Poof! An arm flew out and blood spilled on the ground. Severe pain coming from the chopped arm made Silver Fox grit his teeth, but he managed to endure the pain and quickly pulled away. Looking at Rhodes, a trace of fear and despair gradually appeared in his eyes. As one of the top intelligence leaders in the underground world, he has seen countless powerhouses, and many of them were stronger than Rhodes. But no one put more pressure on him than Rhodes. Because during this battle, Rhodes always controlled the rhythm of the battle. He was rational and calm, but his tactics were fierce and violent, as if two contradictory personalities were mixed together. He doesn't look like a young man who is just popped out of nowhere, but more like a big name on the Grand Line. Silver Fox completely lost the will to resist. In fact, he actually lost the ability to resist. After his arm was cut, the balance of his body declined, and the lightning that invaded his body had already erupted, burning the internal organs. His muscles were tingling and his body was paralyzed. He couldn't mobilize any more power. At this time, the Silver Fox could only stand because of his strong will. Looking at Rhodes, who was slowly approaching with an indifferent expression, the Silver Fox opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something, but words couldn't come out. Either way, Rhodes didn't have the habit of listening to dead people. He raised his sword and wanted to give Silver Fox a quick ending. But at this moment, a loud shout suddenly came from behind. "Stop!" Accompanied by the sound, there were bursts of harsh whistling. A figure approached quickly, at an extremely fast speed, and the gust of wind it brought up was like a typhoon passing through, blowing all the debris out of the street. Seeing this, Silver Fox's dim eyes suddenly came back to life. This was like seeing finally light at the end of the tunnel. "This is Squard from the Whitebeard Pirates. He is my friend. If you kill me, you will offend the Whitebeard Pirates, and you will not be able to get out of this island." He spoke very fast but very calm. No aggression could be felt in his tone, because he was afraid of irritating Rhodes. "Oh!" Rhodes let out a faint sigh, and his sword suddenly fell down. Poof! A head flew out and blood splattered on the ground. It can be seen that there is still a little joy and hope in Silver Fox's wide eyes, as if he never thought that Rhodes would completely ignore the fact that he's under the protection of the Whitebeard Pirates and simply kill him. It's the Whitebeard after all. Damn! At this time, Squard just arrived at the scene. Looking at the Silver Fox whose head was separated, his expression sank and he got a little annoyed. He is one of the captains of the Whitebeard Pirates. On this island, he has always been one of a kind, and no one has ever dared to go against him. "Little devil, you are provoking the wrong person." Squard was holding a big sword, and he looked very imposing, and could definitely scare children to tears. "What do you want?" Rhodes stood with his sword in his hand, very calm, as if he was not facing a famous pirate, but a little cat. "Ah ha 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 ha!" Squard laughed in anger, and said coldly, "Your death." Before his words could be heard, Squard rushed out suddenly, wrapped in a violent momentum, and rushed towards Rhodes like lightning. As one of the captains of the New World under Whitebeard's banner, Squard's strength was beyond doubt. Almost at the same moment Squard rushed over Rhodes moved. Soru! For a moment, Rhodes' body turned into an afterimage, flashed by, and with the explosive speed of Soru, he suddenly slashed down with a sword. Rhodes never thought that he would collide with an enemy of Squard's level at this stage, but since the battle started, he would not have the slightest concern. A sword in his hand is all that he needs. Whoever dares to stand in his way will die. Boom! The violent lightning overflowing from the sword energy formed a thunderous light curtain, the arc flashed, and it crashed towards Squard. Everywhere you look, there is lightning, as if it can destroy everything. The improvement of Rhodes from his previous battle was huge. Counting the last battle with Crow, the training in the middle, and the benefits of this mission, the energy bar has reached an extremely terrifying level, 156. Correspondingly, the strength of the power of lightning has also reached an alarming level. Track, prick, prick. Rhodes released the power of lightning to the extreme, and the dazzling light completely covered this area. The lightning shook, the thunder whistled and roared, and the world changed color. This is terrible. Is he a devil fruit user? People retreated one after another while squinting to look at the battlefield because the light was too blazing, it could burn the eyes. In the pirate world, there are a lot of lightning-related abilities, but such large scale and high intensity of lightning can only be achieved by the legendary devil fruit, Goro Goro no Mi. Chapter 36. Retreat when the mission is complete. On the street, the lightning was raging, the bright light was blazing, and the terrifying electric heat ignited all the combustible things around it, the flames were raging, and the ground was scorched black. At this time, the strength of the power of lightning can be said to have completely surpassed the power of Rhodes' swordsmanship itself. But Squard is worthy of being one of the captains of the Whitebeard pirates. He is physically strong and has an extremely powerful Busashoku haki. With his whole body hardened, he took this violent lightning head-on. Kang! Under his Kanbunshoku haki, the moment Rhodes take this move, Squard reacted, and the horizontal sword blocked Rhodes' energy sword. Little devil, you're still a long way off. At this time, Squard's body was as black as ink, like an evil spirit who came out of hell. His tone was cold and his murderous intent was out of control, as if he didn't rate Rhodes at all. Bathed in lightning, Rhodes was very calm, and didn't respond at all. When his strike was blocked, he immediately took advantage of the situation to retreat. Amidst the lightning field, he seemed to be playing on the home court, and his speed and reaction were extremely fast. With a cold look in Squard's eyes, he chased after him without hesitation. But at this moment, the surrounding lightning suddenly trembled, and one after another turned into lightning swords, then countless of them swept over like a storm. Ding 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 ding! The lightning swords bombarded Squard one after another. Although this attack was unable to break through the hardened protection of the Busashoku haki, it effectively limited Squard's movement. His defense is a bit high. Rhodes' expression remained unchanged because this was what he expected. As a famous pirate, Squard's physique may have already been honed to the peak, and the strength of his Busashoku haki was naturally extremely amazing. It is normal that the power of lightning alone cannot break his defense. There is nothing to be discouraged about. After all, Rhodes' practice time was less than a year. I'm afraid that I won't be able to cause him some damage unless I get the chance to cut him directly with my sword. Inside the thunderous roars of lightning, Rhodes calmly analyzed the gap between the two sides. He has to admit that in the face of these long-established powerhouses, he is still a little immature. Whether it is haki or physical strength, they are not comparable. He can only contain him by the power of lightning, and it would be a bit challenging to create a chance to kill him. At this moment, a figure broke into the lightning. Rhodes' expression changed, and then he quickly calmed down, because the person who came was the Revolutionary Army agent he met before. "You have to go, the Whitebeard pirates are here," he said quickly. Rhodes narrowed his eyes slightly. Through the lightning, he looked at the sturdy figures that were approaching quickly. Among them, there were many, who were stronger than the Silver Fox. If they surround him, it would be difficult to even run. He sighed softly and said, "You go first, I'll set them off with some fireworks." The Revolutionary Army agent was puzzled but didn't say much, and immediately walked away. Rhodes' strength was recognized by him, and he no longer regarded him as a junior, but as a powerhouse at the same level. Phew! Seeing this, Rhodes let out a sigh of relief. A terrifying aura suddenly rose from him. Tsit-zai-zai-zai-zai. Like 1,000 birds chirping. The astonishing power of lightning suddenly poured out, but it did not spread in all directions, but all gathered on Rhodes' open palms. Endless lightning gathered, creating a large thunderball that gradually changed from light blue to dark blue, and the color continued to deepen. Finally, it seemed to break through a certain critical point, and a silver light appeared unexpectedly. A drop of sweat dripped from Rhodes' forehead, but it quickly evaporated. Obviously, this move is also a great burden on Rhodes' body. Go! As if lifting a mountain, Rhodes slowly pushed the thunderball out. As soon as the thunderball left his hand, Rhodes turned around without hesitation and left quickly. With just 2 flashes, he disappeared from the street. What? Squard, who has just broken through the lightning's siege at this time, rushed out head-on to find the thunderball closing on him. The thunderball was dark blue, mixed with a hint of silver light, which looked extremely gorgeous and dazzling. Before he could react, the large thunderball suddenly stagnated and then exploded. Boom! It sounded like 1,000 shells exploding at the same time. The lightning flashed like a flame, the violent force destroyed everything, and the earth was instantly blasted into a 5-meter deep black hole. After taking a direct hit, Squard was blasted out in an instant, spewing a mouthful of blood in the air, and rolled over a dozen meters on the ground before he stopped in front of his comrades. What's going on? The captain was beaten like this. What kind of enemy did you meet? Is it someone from the beast pirates? The members of his crew were left stunned and hurriedly stepped forward to help Squard. Looking at the place that almost turned into ruins in the distance, and the nearby fragmented buildings, they couldn't help showing awe, and for a while, they didn't dare to make a move. After Squard got up, his face was flushed, he was both humiliated and shocked. Fortunately, he wasn't severely injured because he was covered in the Busashoku haki, but his vision was still a bit blurry. Block the port for me and catch that kid. His tone was full of anger and irritation. Squard got mad, and his heart was full of hatred after he got humiliated by a young man in front of his companions. Yes. The pirates responded in succession. The whole island fell into chaos at that moment. And this time, Rhodes had already arrived at the port and boarded the ship where Sabo and Koala were waiting. Koala seemed to have received the news long ago. As soon as Rhodes boarded the ship, she ordered the sailor to set sail. Whoosh! The oncoming sea breeze mixed with a little salty smell, made Rhodes finally relax. Looking at the island that was gradually receding, Rhodes couldn't help but laugh. You've made a lot of noises. On the side, Koala shook her head helplessly. He's actually bold to dare to fight against the Whitebeard pirates inside their territory. Fortunately, he managed to escape. Good job. Sabo patted Rhodes on the shoulder with a smile, feeling that his approach was very appetizing, and it was a pity he didn't go all way out, otherwise, he would have had a great fight with Squard. You too. Enough is enough. Koala got angry. Seeing this scene, Koala covered her forehead, feeling a little bad. When Sabo was on a mission, he was very thick-headed and often messed up. She was responsible for cleaning up his mess every time. I thought Rhodes would be better, but she didn't expect that this guy was more messed up than Sabo. Enough is enough, why don't you stay at the headquarters and manage the reserves? Is my mission completed? Rhodes said. Certainly. Sabo nodded lightly, took out a den mushi, and handed it to Rhodes. The specific appointment will be made at the headquarters, but for now, this is for you. Rhodes was stunned for a moment. A phone call? Chapter 37. Chronos Island. The den mushi are special creatures in the pirate world. They are mainly used for long-distance communication. Anyone with a bit of identity in the pirate world will have one. The den mushi that Sabo gave to Rhodes seems to be an original product that has never been held before because it was still maintaining the most basic state. With the constant use of the host, the den mushi will gradually imitate the host's facial features and will imitate his expression and tone when talking. It's indeed a very interesting creature. However, Rhodes was not interested in this. In his eyes, it was just a mobile phone. Although this mission didn't take long, it had gone through 2 major battles, especially the last big move he used, which used most of his power and left Rhodes extremely exhausted physically and mentally. After making sure it was safe, he returned to the cabin and fell asleep. The next day, after waking up, Rhodes was no longer tired and felt really refreshed, and at the same time, the injury he suffered on his body seemed to have completely recovered after this short period of sleep. The energy of the Book of Knowledge is 493. Rhodes stretched his body and stood up with excitement in his eyes. Zzz. Things were getting great for Rhodes, and the road to the top was clearer than ever. The color that the power of lightning was emitting was a bit darker now. Compared with the previous light blue, it is much darker and more powerful. As for the gain of energy, at first glance, it seems that the energy collected from the battle with Squard is not as high as that of the Silver Fox. But this is only because the battle between Rhodes and Squard was too short and the battle process was not intense, so it could not be counted as a complete battle. My haki is still far from. After this battle, Rhodes had a clearer image of his current level. Judging from Squard's performance in the original, his level was roughly equal to the Vice Admirals of the Marines. Certainly. In the Marines, there is a huge gap in strength between a Vice Admiral and another, and the exact position of Squard is still unclear. However, to be able to fight against Squard and suppress and kill someone like the Silver Fox isn't that simple. Rhodes should at least has the strength of the Rear Admiral of the Marines headquarters, and his destructive power should be even greater than that. If his physical strength was stronger, and his mastery of haki si more proficient, he would be able to defeat anyone weaker than 3 Admiral without any problems. Getting stronger physical strength cannot be rushed, it's a matter of time and hard work. Rhodes' eyes flickered. Swordsmanship however is a bit of a drag. It is a pity that there are not many strong swordsmen in the Revolutionary Army. Of course, the current Rhodes, ordinary swordsman, or even top swordsman, may not be able to guide him. Only those great swordsmen who have stood at the top of swordsmanship are qualified to instruct him. But what kind of character is a great swordsman? There are only a handful of dragon slayers, and it is a blessing to meet one of them, not to mention the other master's guidance. While thinking wildly, Rhodes came to the deck. At this time, there was only Koala on the deck, sunbathing in a leisurely manner. Her clothes were naturally extremely sexy, revealing large parts of her snow-white skin. "Where's Sabo? You've finally woken up. Sabo should be practicing at this time." Koala took off her goggles and smiled. "Oh, where are we going now? Do you remember what I told you before? If you complete the Cotter assessment, you will immediately join us in another task." Rhodes leaned against the railing, squinting to enjoy the sun. He was eager to fight and eager to practice to become stronger, but he does not reject the enjoyment of exploring and adventure, which can be seen in his pursuit of food. Koala sat up, pondered for a moment, and said, "The ruler of the Kronos Island, Bell, once served for the world government. Although his status is not high, he has a lot of power and has participated in many important tasks. This person is very clever. Knowing that such a relationship will never end well, especially with what information he has, he escaped during a mission and came to the New World, specifically to Kronos Island to plant his new roots. With the help of the secret information collected in his previous work experience, he made good friends with many people in the underground world. And he's now living a very good life under their protection. This time, the mission is to steal the intelligence information in Bell's hands. This intelligence information may contain secrets and scandals of the world government and may be useful to the Revolutionary Army. Are we going to kidnap and interrogate him?" There was a hint of excitement in Rhodes' eyes. A few black lines appeared on Koala's forehead. She glanced at Rhodes speechlessly and said, "Bell is well established in the underground world. He also recruited a lot of mercenaries for protection. He is in his old lair. It's not impossible to rely on force, but it's almost impossible to do it only with the three of us. This mission is mainly about stealing. If you can't overwhelm them, you can always find another way around." "Then what am I going to do?" Rhodes pouted. In terms of infiltration, the only way he knows is to pursue the unparalleled assassin's approach and kill all the witnesses, but this time he obviously couldn't. Koala stretched her body, got up, and replied, "Bell has the habit of running Colosseum competitions, and the prizes are generous. The biggest prize is often a devil fruit, in order to attract strong people and recruit them. If there is a seed with great potential, he will come to the scene in person, and it will be convenient for Sabo to act at that time." "Is she asking him to take place in the competition and let him win?" "I can do this." Rhodes nodded, indicating that it was very simple. Koala rolled her eyes and said, "I will be in charge of the central command. You have to be careful and don't reveal too much of your strength. Bell is not a fool. Naturally, he knows that a devil fruit cannot attract a real powerhouse. If Rhodes turned out to be too strong, it will naturally arouse suspicion." Rhodes nodded lightly. "This is very simple. He just wanted to hone his swordsmanship. In fact, in terms of swordsmanship, Rhodes' strength is not that strong, and he is probably just a little stronger than Shinoa. Without the guidance of a great swordsman-level teacher, if you want to improve your swordsmanship, you can only rely on constant battles." "Certainly. By just relying on battles, progress will be relatively slow, just like Zoro, before he apprenticed under my hawk. Before that, although his performance was good, it was not amazing. But after 2 years of studying under my hawk, his strength has grown by leaps and bounds, and he was completely qualified to be the vice-captain of the Straw Hat Pirates." After more than a week of sailing, the ship gradually arrived at its destination. Under more than 10 years of management under Bell, Kronos Island was very prosperous. There were many people coming and going, not only businessmen, pirates, but even people from the world government. This obviously benefits from Bell's huge network. When Rhodes was still in the port, he even saw the flag of the Beast Pirates. "It's really prosperous." Rhodes sighed softly. "There are no real continents in the pirate world. The world is composed of islands. The islands are divided into small, medium, and large islands according to their size and area. With a perfect ecosystem, there will be no shortage of necessities such as freshwater resources. Small islands are usually inhabited. Medium-sized islands are much larger, with at least a few small towns and usually a large town in the center. And large islands, which can accommodate a country, such as Alabasta, Dressrosa. The Kronos Island in front of you is a medium-sized island. The development is very thorough. From the port, you can see a wide road leading directly to the central town. Chapter 38. A Surprise Encounter. Bell was a very good businessman, and due to that Kronos got very prosperous, the storefront was complete, and the goods were from all over the world. Walking on the street, sniffing the fragrance in the air, Rhodes couldn't help but point with his finger to a certain place. Following the scent, the three of them came to a restaurant. This restaurant looked unusual, it can only be seen from the door. The crystal lamp behind the door was shining brilliantly, and the door was full of complicated gilt patterns. On both sides of the luxurious carpet, there were sturdy security guards in uniforms standing upright, and two welcoming girls with top-grade looks. The old good rule. Eat first and then do the task. After speaking, Sabo laughed lightly and walked inside first, walking gracefully. His every move was full of aristocratic temperament. He didn't seem like a Revolutionary Army soldier engaged in underground activities at all. This kind of temperament naturally attracted the attention of the welcoming girls, and the two greeted them with sweet smiles. Koala gestured at Rhodes slightly and walked into the restaurant. Rhodes followed closely, feeling a bit excited because he also had high expectations for the food in such a high-end restaurant. It seems that the life of the Revolutionary Army cadres is not bad, he thought to himself. Initially, he thought that the daily life of the Revolutionary Army was to hide in the dark and shoot secretly. If you think about it, you are right. However, Sabo and Koala weren't your every other Revolutionary Army soldier, and they were also special cases. The three of them took their seats, and Sabo quickly ordered dishes. The strong people in the pirate world may not be picky, but they are all foodies. This is due to their strong physique, which requires sufficient energy and nutrition to maintain. While serving the dishes, Rhodes looked around casually. Suddenly, he was slightly startled, then his body trembled, and he immediately retracted his gaze. Because he saw an unexpected tall figure. Why is Jun here? Rhodes was slightly horrified. She's one of the rare female great swordsmen in the world. As a candidate for being the next admiral, her strength is unfathomable, and her attack power may surpass the three current admirals. Along with the horror he felt, Rhodes couldn't help feeling a little excited. Meeting with a great swordsman. It is extremely rare. If he can ask her. Although as a Revolutionary Army soldier asking an admiral candidate to become your master seems a little unreliable, Rhodes didn't care about this at all. Strength is the foundation of everything. For Rhodes, whether it is a pirate, a marine, or a Revolutionary Army soldier, it is essentially just an identity and a position, and it is completely unable to impose any restraints on him as a traveler. Jun's Kanbunshoku has already reached its peak, and even though Rhodes didn't look at her for more than a second, it has caught her attention. After her gentle light glances swept over Rhodes, Jun seemed to have noticed something about Rhodes and couldn't help but smile, then gracefully raised her cup in greeting. He's a really sharp boy. Seeing this scene out of the corner of his eyes, Rhodes was a little surprised, but he kept his calm expression and also raised his teacup and drank it. Interesting kid. Jun blinked, then retracted her gazes. Although she was a little surprised that the three of them have such a strong aura at their age, as a candidate for the admiral position and a great swordsman, she has seen countless winds and waves, and many of them are young and strong like Rhodes and the others too with him. To put it bluntly, even these three at this time could not arouse the interest of this great swordsman. Well, it's getting late, I should go out and buy some clothes. Jun got up gracefully. It was only at that moment that Rhodes found out that this female great swordsman was really tall. She should be more than 2 meters tall, wearing short shorts, revealing her pair of long beautiful legs. There was also a spider tattooed on her left leg, which gave her graceful but luring vibes. Many young men in the restaurant were looking at her secretly, but they didn't dare to approach her, because although Jun was beautiful, she had a noble, cold presence that was indicating that she cannot be played with, and it is difficult to approach. This woman seems very strong, very strong. After Jun left, Sabo took a deep breath and wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. Like you know anything, Rhodes secretly complained, she was a great swordsman, she probably doesn't need more than her hands to defeat the three of them. Koala pondered as if she was recalling. After a while, she suddenly exclaimed in a low voice, "She must be, Jun, she's a vice-captain and an admiral candidate." Vice-captain? Sabo took a deep breath. He is not one of those supernovas who have goals higher than the sky and the guts to challenge the Yonko before even stepping into the new world. As the future chief of staff of the Revolutionary Army, Sabo has a very clear reflection on his own strength. He knows very well how powerful people like admirals are. Legends say that Rayleigh, the Dark King, cut an island with one slash. The 3 current admirals of the Marines are comparable to him in the humanoid natural disasters aspect, and can easily destroy the climate of an island. The legendary strongest man in the world even possesses the power to destroy the world. The so-called fearless are just ignorance. The more you know about the world, the more you become humble. Even if he firmly believes that he will be able to compete with these legendary figures in the future, at this moment, he is still too far away. Koala was also shocked, and her forehead was covered in a cold sweat. "I don't know why these people are here, but they shouldn't be able to interfere with our mission. You think too highly of yourself." Rhodes was speechless. As a candidate for becoming an admiral, Jun may not have as much power as a true admiral, but her status is almost the same. Her status is high enough to dispatch an army to this place. It was probably just a coincidence that we met her here. Maybe she was just bored, and ran from the warship to have a cup of afternoon tea. Although what Rhodes said was a little unreliable, it was inexplicably reasonable, and both Sabo and Koala felt relieved after hearing it. Soon, the food was served. The rich aroma and delicate dishes finally diverted the 3's attention, and they calmed down and enjoyed the food. To be able to open a restaurant in the New World, the chef of this restaurant naturally has 2 forks, not to mention the color and fragrance. There was also a special sauce. After mixing it together, the taste became excellent and the fragrance was stronger. Since the 3 of them had great appetites, they gradually forgot their surprise encounter with Jun. Such a terrifying existence that conquered the sea was still not too far away from them. However, Rhodes didn't think too much about it. Even if he wanted to become her disciple, he couldn't rashly say, "I'm very talented, accept me as a disciple." Masters of the Blade pay a lot of attention to the predestination method, just like Zoro is to Mihawk. Rhodes had a hunch that he would meet Jun again, and it wouldn't take too long. Chapter 39. The awaited day. After coming out of the restaurant, the 3 got separated. Sabo was going to spy on Belle's castle, detect the garrison inside, observe the terrain, and formulate the best escaping route. Rhodes and Koala went to the arena to observe it secretly. On the way there, Rhodes heard sky-shattering noises coming from the arena. The numerous voice indicated that it was full of people, and the shouts were endless. This is an extremely big coliseum, surrounded by auditoriums, and there were figures sitting on it, from fishmen, long-handed, giants, and other races. After going inside, Rhodes saw that some well-dressed nobles were screaming their lungs out, and some noble ladies had green eyes, staring at the wolf-like burly man on the stage. Belle will take out devil fruits every once in a while and use them to hold competitions to attract more people. Usually, this place is used for gambling. The fighters come to the stage to win prizes, and the spectators bet and gamble, forming an industry that makes money every day. There was an undisguised look of disgust in Koala's eyes. The kinds of battles that were taking place there were about life and death. The scenes were often extremely bloody, and the losers often were cut into 2 parts or smashed to the ground. Sometimes slaves are used to playing around. The kind-hearted Koala was naturally disgusted by this behavior. Rhodes' expression was indifferent. There was nothing to say really. Soon the game started. They were 2 tall and strong men. Both of them fought extremely fiercely, and the hot battle instantly stimulated the audience. The entire arena went into a state of madness. Another fighter came on stage and lost again, and the game gradually reached a climax. Many people even took off their outer clothes and shouted even harder. After each match, the winners were naturally elated and shouted excitedly, while the losers scolded and cursed, especially those who forfeited. Between the battles, there were hot girls with good bodies and scantily clad dancing on stage, and the whole scene always maintained a frenetic atmosphere. Too weak. Seeing this scene, Rhodes shook his head. Most of the people who participated in these battles were the weakest in the New World, and they didn't even learn how to use haki. Of course, they are now. Koala said, after 2 days when the real competition starts, there will still be some experts. Sometimes some pirate captains who have just come to the new world will come to the stage to fight in person. Devil fruits are clearly priced, but most of the time, they are priceless. Rhodes nodded lightly. The reason these pirate captains would join such a game is that after coming to the new world, the gap will be like the distance between heaven and earth, and eating a devil fruit is the quickest way to gain more power. Even the ability to gamble on devil fruits is tempting. However, gaining more strength is a more tempting existence than money and status. Only with strength can you have money and status. After that, you can get everything you want and realize your dreams. Rhodes said to himself. Rhodes was lucky. The existence of the Book of Knowledge changed his fate and gave him the opportunity to step onto the peak and overlook the world. And Rhodes firmly seized this opportunity, which means that this world will also change. Let's go. It was getting dark. Rhodes and the two left the arena and found a hotel to check in. Soon, Sabo joined them. The three discussed the plan and then went to sleep separately. Of course, Rhodes still uses lightning to forge his body instead of sleep, and he will never slack off in this regard. The time has come to the spring of the year 1521, and it is getting closer and closer to that turbulent era. Which naturally means that there is less and less time left for Rhodes to become stronger. In the next 2 days, the three gathered more information and waited for the start of the competition. Rhodes was taking things a bit slowly. The hotel wasn't suitable for high-intensity exercises, so he wanders around the town, and whenever he encountered a weapons store, he went in to see if he has Zoro's luck. However, this was obviously something that can be encountered but not sought after. In other words, it is very difficult for a famous sword to have no owner in this fiercely competitive world. After a few days, Rhodes had nothing to gain. Finally, the last day came. This afternoon, when he entered the arena, he obviously felt that the atmosphere was completely different from the previous days. The audience sat there extremely focused yet also excited. On the one hand, the status of this group of spectators was higher than usual, either richer or more powerful. On the other hand, it is also because there are fierce bodyguards standing near the arena, all armed with guns and swords, with cold stares in their eyes. They clearly looked well trained. Come on, come on. Noticing the people sitting on the VIP stage, there was a commotion in the crowd. Isn't that guy from the Beast Pirates? Hey, Mr. Bell, the Island Lord is here too. Oh, the captain of the Silver Sword Pirates is here. I heard that he is looking for a devil fruit. I'm afraid he will participate in person. Every big man appeared on the stage and caused a lot of discussions. Some showed envy, some hated, and some sighed. These people on stage are all famous in this sea area, and some people are quite famous in the whole new world. Hey, who is that woman, so beautiful? Some people in the audience were secretly suspicious, and many men with insufficient concentration had really red eyes, and they were fascinated by their emotions. You don't even know Stussy, the queen of the pleasure district. Dude, you know nothing about the new world. Someone mocked. Queen of the pleasure district. The person who spoke before was stunned for a moment, and then suddenly thought of something, and his face turned pale, and quickly shut up. Koala also looked solemn, and said in a low voice, "It turns out that Stussy was visiting, no wonder Belle came directly to the scene. I just didn't expect that even someone from the Beast Pirates would come. It seems that Stussy's status in the underworld is higher than expected." Rhodes nodded slightly. Stussy could sit at the main table at the tea party of Big Mom, and she was obviously at the level of an old monster. Even that guy from the Beast Pirates had to give face. That's fine. All attention is drawn to them, and Sabo's actions will be much smoother. Koala breathed a sigh of relief, but it's better for us to make some noises here, we're not at risk of being exposed anyway. Rhodes nodded and looked around. He was looking for Jun. On such a big occasion, it stands to reason that Jun might also appear. Of course, she can't appear as a vice-captain, but as one of the people in the crowd. After all, this is the site of the Beast Pirates. If her identity was exposed, I am afraid that something big will happen. The Yonko Kaido is a real lunatic and madman. If the Marines dare to provoke him, he won't hesitate to attack a Marines base or even their headquarters. At this moment, a cold female voice suddenly came from behind. Little devil, are you looking for me? Chapter 40. Convention. The sun was scorching and the wind was warm, but Rhodes felt an inexplicable chill on the back of his neck, and his whole body became a little stiff. He turned his head slowly and then saw a familiar figure. What he saw was a woman sitting in the VIP seat very luxuriously. She was tall and graceful, with long beautiful legs. One hand was casually raised on the armrest of the chair, and the other hand was resting on her cheeks, overlooking the arena as if it was her own playground. Her long smooth black hair was hanging down, and she was wearing a tulle-like black top with a wide open neckline. She didn't have a big chest, but it was remarkable, exquisite, and delicate. The bifurcation of the skirt was very high, revealing her snow-white pair of thrilling crossed long legs. Her figure was charming and enchanting, and her face was very beautiful, with no traces of the years. She had bright eyes and white teeth, and while she looked at Rhodes and his friend from behind, she couldn't help but smile. Rhodes never thought that this woman would be so sharp, and it was so coincidental that the two crossed paths again. So much so that for a while, he was a little dazed. It was Koala who responded quickly. She almost instantly turned on the mode of acting stupid and smiled innocently. "Big sister, you are so beautiful." Ah! Trials have proved that praising women for being beautiful is never out of date. Especially a young and beautiful girl like Koala, and, if Rhodes remembers correctly, Jun was not too young. Jun smiled when she heard these words, and said, "Little girl, you're quite sweet." She had a deep and sharp look in her eyes, and because of Rhodes' reactions, she clearly knew that he recognizes her as a vice-captain. It's not easy. However, Jun didn't mean to embarrass these little juniors, and the sharp looks in her eyes slowly faded away. Koala was very clever. She quickly analyzed the situation, immediately hit the snake with a stick, and started a conversation. After all, this was a marine, not a vicious pirate, and seeing Jun in casual clothes, obviously means that she is here just to play. Seeing this, Rhodes was relieved. There were very few scenes about Jun in the original. He was also uncertain about her character. She's here now, if I show her my talent. After relaxing, Rhodes got a bit excited. From the very beginning, he has set his path to become stronger, relying on his swordsmanship as the core. Now that the power of lightning is the mainstay, this concept has become a bit embarrassing. Only by apprenticing under a great swordsman and studying swordsmanship in a systematic and in-depth manner can he achieve a breakthrough in swordsmanship, otherwise he will be embarrassed forever. Moreover, the energy of the Book of Knowledge will continue to grow with battle and practice, and the power of lightning will naturally continue to grow stronger. "Little devil, you want to be my apprentice?" Rhodes was thinking about it, but Jun suddenly spoke up, which startled Rhodes and Koala. "You, how did you know?" Rhodes said cautiously. He was a little terrified. Once it can be said to be accidental, but twice is a bit unusual. Could it be that this female great swordsman has some kind of ability to read people's hearts? There are examples to follow. For example, Princess Otohime of the Fishman Island was born with a kanbunshoku that makes her hear the inner voice of others. For a pure swordsman like Jun, Rhodes won't be too surprised if she had such an ability. You don't know how to hide your thoughts at all. You are still too immature. Jun smiled lightly and said with a deep, yet playful tone. When Rhodes heard these words, his expression changed, and he almost instantly entered a state of concentration, focusing his thoughts in one line. His mind was highly concentrated, and his eyes were as flat as a mirror lake. "What?" Jun let out a small murmur and glanced at Rhodes in surprise. She didn't expect Rhodes to react so quickly. What surprised her even more, was how profound Rhodes mastered the state of concentration. The state of concentration is the basic state that all swordsmen possess. A strong foundation, in a sense, can also be regarded as a talent. Most swordsmen must have a brewing time if they wanted to enter such a state, which can be as short as a sword swing or as long as a minute. Only some top swordsmen, or even great swordsmen, can enter such a state at will, just like Rhodes did. What she didn't know was that Rhodes maintained such a state almost every night to temper his body. Of course, he was very skilled at doing it. Jun pondered for a while and said, "How old are you?" 17. Rhodes first thought about it in his heart and found that Jun couldn't detect it, so he said with a sigh of relief. It is really unpleasant to be easily readable by others. Thinking generates brain waves, which will radiate out. If your kanbunshoku is keen enough, you will be able to catch them and then gain insight into people's hearts. However, most strong people are able to restrain their mental will and achieve a state similar to that of a swordsman's concentration. Jun's ability should only be effective on ordinary people, or weaker people. This shouldn't be right. In a fierce battle, others will be able to read your mind if you're having unstable thoughts. This is somehow similar to predicting the future. In a second, Rhodes had a more intuitive analysis of this seemingly terrifying ability. Fear stems from the unknown, and after understanding it, it is actually like that. When he was thinking, Jun suddenly said, "If you can beat everyone in this arena, I will consider training you for a while." For a while. Rhodes' forehead was covered in black lines, but Koala cheered in surprise, "That's great. With your guidance, Rhodes will definitely be very happy." Jun said expressionlessly, "Let's wait until he defeats everyone." Rhodes glanced at Koala and found that her surprise came from the bottom of her heart. She didn't seem to have any grudges against Jun as a vice-captain of the Marines, she just thought it was good for Rhodes. She's really a pure and sensual little girl. Rhodes sighed in his heart, but said very calmly, "Then please sit there and watch me, master." "I'm not your master yet." Jun's tone was very calm, but there was a hint of a smile in her eyes. This 17-year-old swordsman had an excellent foundation. Such seedlings are rare in the world, you really can't just ignore them. Koala secretly complained, the smile in that old hag's eyes was overflowing. And at this time, the arena has come to a critical stage. A big man dressed in animal skins, with a rough face, as if he had come out of the wild, was looking at the heroes in the arena. He has already defeated 7 or 8 opponents who came to challenge, many of them were strong, and some of them even had devil fruit ability. His Busashoku haki was extraordinary, his physical skills were simple but very strong. He attacked like a fierce beast, extremely violent, and when he moved, he was like a cheetah preying, extremely fast. Even Buckley from the Beast Pirates admired him. Chapter 41. First Appearance. The arena fell silent for a while. Many participants who were originally confident couldn't help but back down because this barbarian called House was too strong. According to Rhodes' strength theory, at least it is close to the level of a rear admiral, and he seems to be the strongest in terms of physical strength among all participants. As long as he can't break his defense, House can blast his opponent. Is there anyone else who wants to be crushed? House stood in the field, his eyes swept across the 4 directions calmly, revealing his killing intent. He was determined to get this devil fruit because it was a Zoan-type devil fruit. As long as he gets this devil fruit, he has great confidence to join the Beast Pirates and get himself a good position. Having been in the New World for so long, House knows very well that without a strong enough backer, it is difficult to survive in this chaotic sea, and he might get crushed by another big force someday. The name of the madman of the Beast Pirates, Kaido, is known to the whole world, and it is naturally the most reassuring to sail under such a captain who protects his shortcomings. Of course, the Whitebeard pirates would do too, but he couldn't find a way to join, so he had to settle for the next best thing. House's voice echoed in the empty arena, but no one responded for a long time. Is this the end of the game? How is that possible? There are still many participants, who haven't fought yet, but they are still observing and don't want to join in too early. There is no intermission between battles, so if you join too early you will only get tired later. People were talking a lot, and they couldn't help but look at the higher platform. Bell frowned slightly. Although House's strength was good, the battle have just begun and he can't end it so quickly, so he had to operate behind the scenes and let his own people take action. At this time, a figure suddenly jumped inside the arena. "Go back, I don't want to kill you." He spoke lightly and indifferently. In an instant, there was an uproar in the audience. I didn't expect that captain of the Silver Sword Pirates would really take action. He is a powerful pirate with a reward of 190 million. I heard that a few months ago, the Silver Sword Pirates suffered heavy losses from a great storm, and he lost his vice-captain during that time. The captain, Leonard's name has long been misplaced. Tisk tisk, it seems that he intends to join the Beast's Pirates by winning this. Only the forces of the Yonko have enough capital and manpower to help him rebuild his crew. Everyone looked at Leonard, the Silver Sword captain, with incomparable awe. House's expression also changed. He obviously didn't expect to encounter such a big enemy, but this devil fruit is his future, he can't just let it go, and he won't let it go. Come. House took his fighting stance. You do it. Leonard put one hand behind him and raised the other hand slightly. When House saw this, he was furious. Although the man in front of him was very famous, House was also the man who crashed everyone who stood in his way up until the moment, how can he be humiliated? He roared angrily and slammed the ground with his feet. His figure was shot out like a bullet, his 5 fingers clenched into a fist covered with haki, and he swung straight at Captain Silversword. His punch looked as big as a mountain, causing an astonishing tearing sound. Looking at the heavy punch, Leonard didn't try to dodge or even draw his sword. When House Fist got closer, he clenched his right hand tightly and punched out at the same time. His movement made no sound, but it came first. Only a click sound was heard. The 2 fists collided, but House flew out like a straw, spewing a mouthful of blood into the air, and got smashed heavily on the ground in the distance. He ended with 1 punch. House, a pure master of physical strength, in the battle of strength, couldn't match the strength of this swordsman, who didn't even draw his blade. As long as you're not a fool, you can see the absolute difference between the two. The audience was silent, and everyone showed the same expressions on their faces. In their opinion, this game has already ended after this attack, and the result will never change no matter what House will do next. Do you still want to fight? Leonard lightly retracted his fists and stood with his hands behind his back. House's face was gloomy. He had strong physical strength, so he won't suffer much damage from a single punch. However, the strength shown by Leonard's punch was terrifying. Even if he can hold on for a little bit, once that guy draws his sword. I admit defeat. He lowered his head and left the stage sadly. On the high platform, Buckley, from the Beast Pirates, saw this and ordered his men to go and recruit House. House characteristics fit well with the style of the Beast Pirates, even more so than the Silver Sword Captain, Leonard. However, this is an open competition, and he is not good at breaking the rules, so he can only recruit privately. I want to congratulate you, it seems you have recruited twice in a row. Stussy covered her mouth and smiled, with a hint of natural charm in her voice. Buckley also smiled when he heard this. He was stationed on this island solely for this reason, so when he met the right person, he would try to recruit him. In fact, the Yonko are not so much a pirate group as they are warlord forces, separated from each other. They also recruit subordinates, manage industries, divide spheres of influence, and even do secret research technology. And this time, Leonard stood indifferently in the field with a relaxed expression. He obviously didn't think that anyone would dare to challenge him. He looked at the devil fruit on the high platform with fiery eyes, and secretly clenched his fists. Today, after encountering major setbacks, he will finally stand up again and change his fate. Rhodes, it's your turn to take action. Koala looked at the situation in the field and said in a low voice, as long as you defeat Leonard, others should not dare to challenge you. Jun glanced at Koala in surprise, because judging from her tone, she was obviously confident that Rhodes could defeat Leonard. Initially, she was considering whether to lower her requirements, because Leonard is really not something that a little guy of Rhodes' age can handle. But now it seems that the situation has changed a little bit. Rhodes seems to be better than she has imagined. Rhodes nodded lightly, and at a moment when everyone almost felt that the game was over, he suddenly jumped into the arena, and then walked to the center step by step, facing Leonard. Are you sure you want to challenge me? Looking at the young face in front of him, Leonard couldn't help but show a look of doubt as he pointed at himself and said. He's the captain of the Silver Sword Pirates after all. He's the man, who fought all the way to the New World, beheaded a commodore, defeated a rear admiral, crossed countless dangerous places, sailed through storms, and was famous for his reputation. He never expected that he would be challenged by someone so young, maybe even half his age. You got that right, I want to challenge you. Rhodes was expressionless. Age has always been his handicap, and it is normal to be underestimated by others. In fact, even Rhodes' body shape has remained at the level of a normal person, or maybe just a little bit taller than a normal person. Chapter 42. Young Swordsman. Most of the powerhouses in the pirate world are gigantic, and every single one of them is over 2 meters tall. Admirals of the Marines are generally about 3 meters, and the Yonko are more exaggerated than each other. Of course, almost no one in the pirate world has a normal body shape, but there are monster-like powerhouses, with normal human shapes, such as the Yonko Shanks and the world's greatest swordsman, Mihawk. But these people have been famous for a long time. Moreover, Rhodes looked a little young. Few people really think that Rhodes is strong. Maybe he has some strength, but he can't be the opponent of Silver Sword Leonard. Therefore, when Rhodes said those words, there were bursts of boos on the field as expected. Berkeley on the high platform couldn't help but sneer. He turned his head to look at Belle and said, "Did you invite this kid funny? Well, just to heat things up. Maybe he thought that he can compete with Leonard since he chose not to kill House." Belle shook his head and laughed. What an ignorant young man, he thought. Leonard didn't kill House because it was obvious that Berkeley had a good impression of House, and the latter wanted to join the Beast Pirates too, so he didn't want to piss him off. On the side, Stussy smiled faintly, but no one could understand the meaning behind that smile. At the time, she was glancing at the VIP seats in the distance. As a member of CP0, how could she not recognize Jun, the famous swordsman and the candidate for being an admiral? "Maybe this will be a little bit interesting," Stussy said softly. Belle was slightly taken aback when he heard these words and felt a bit at loss. He glanced at Rhodes on the stage, then he noticed Rhodes' young and handsome face. It seems that this cougar didn't settle down yet. "This kid is old enough to be your son. And at this time on the field." Leonard, who got a definite answer, calmed down and said indifferently, "Since you are courting death, I will fulfill your wish. Stop this nonsense. If you want to fight, then let's fight." Rhodes didn't take a fighting posture and stood there extremely relaxed, but when he put his hand on the hilt of his sword, his aura suddenly changed. It seemed as if the sword of the world was unsheathed, and the stern sharpness in his eyes seemed enough to silence the crowd. Sensing that aura that Rhodes had, Leonard's expression also changed suddenly and stared at Rhodes solemnly. Rhodes slowly drew his sword. It was really slow, inch by inch, but Leonard felt an even more astonishing momentum at the time. It seemed as if he was facing a formidable enemy. Scoff. Almost at the next moment, everyone only felt that a ray of light flashed in front of them, and then they saw dazzling silver sword energy shot out, tearing the air and the ground, sweeping toward Leonard. Cut. Facing Rhodes' sword energy, Leonard looked in a bit of disbelief, and did not dare to take it head-on. He drew his sword and slashed without hesitation. Scoff. Turquoise sword energy burst out and met Rhodes' sword energy. The two sword energies collided and exploded in the air, and then splashed. It turned out to be a tie. "This young kid is also a powerful swordsman," someone exclaimed. House, who had just stepped back, was in disbelief. He couldn't even take a punch from Leonard, yet this young man took one of his sword's chi so easily. Soru. Right after the collision, Leonard suddenly disappeared out of thin air. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Rhodes. Strike. The imbued blade with Busashoku Haki slashed through the air, bringing an astonishing tearing sound, targeting Rhodes. Before the sword could even reach him, a faint stinging pain could be felt on his face. Interesting. Rhodes got serious. Holding the sword in both hands, he hardened his blade with Haki, and then greeted him without showing any weakness. Kang. The sound of gold and iron clashing suddenly exploded, and invisible airwaves swept out. The two blades that were dyed pitch black with Haki collided together, but after a stalemate, they suddenly separated and then collided frantically. Clang 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 clang. In the blink of an eye, the two clashed dozens or hundreds of times, and most of the audience could only see the two shadows fighting together on the field. The terrifying speed even set off a strong wind, blowing dust. This battle between the swordsmen was shocking. This is Leonard's true strength? It's horrifying. House couldn't help but say, while the cold sweat was covering his forehead. Only now did he realize how lucky he was. If he collided with such a big guy in the outside world, I'm afraid he wouldn't last long before he would be chopped into pieces. After joining the Beast's Pirates, I must work hard to get a devil fruit as soon as possible and strengthen myself. He thought in his heart, and his eyes became more and more determined. Hearing the sound of bang, the figures in the field suddenly separated, and they each retreated more than 10 meters, breathing slightly. This kind of intense collision, even though both of them have inhuman physiques and long endurance, they can't stand it for long. You are very good, but if you think you can beat me, it's a few years sooner. Leonard showed a proud look because, in the previous clash, he had the upper hand. Leonard's speed and strength are all superior to you. His Busashoku Haki is a little weaker, but he is still a little bit stronger. In the VIP seat, Jun's light analysis made Rhodes look thoroughly. If you want to win, your current strength is not enough. Koala smiled lightly and said, keep watching, he's not serious yet. Jun's expression changed when she heard the words and stared with her beautiful eyes at the stage without blinking. Even if she said so, she was ready to rescue at any time. Jun will not base her expectations on nothing. She is a great swordsman, a powerhouse at the top of the world. She is accustomed to taking everything in her hands and acting according to her own preferences. She fell in love with the idea of apprenticing Rhodes, thus, she will not allow him to have an accident. Or in other words, she won't allow him to die in such a small place. In the field. Hearing Leonard's confident words, Rhodes was expressionless. He didn't answer him with words, but with a slash out of his sword. Scoff. The next moment, blue sword energy wrapped in terrifying lightning swept out, like a light curtain, more than 10 meters in a vertical and horizontal radius, forming a thunder field. Lightning. Lightning is already known for its speed, and the same is true for the sword chi. The two are mixed together, they were as fast as light and shadow. Leonard only had time to harden his entire body and ended up shrouded in lightning. Trick, prick. Even with the protection of the hardening of the Busashoku Haki, the terrifying power of thunder was still unbearable, his muscles twitched, his whole body tingled, and his hair stood on end. Whoosh! Finally, Leonard rushed out of the lightning field in an embarrassed manner. He jumped back for dozens of meters, then stopped to take a breath, and let out a puff of black smoke. His expression was extremely ugly at that moment. Bell's arena was as silent as death at this moment. Everyone was staring blankly at the godlike young figure bathed in lightning on the stage. Chapter 43. Confusion. Lightning. He is a devil fruit user. Jun narrowed her eyes slightly and said to Koala with some displeasure. Most pure swordsmen, or those who pursue the peak of swordsmanship, don't like devil fruits. He's not. Koala hurriedly shook her head and said quickly, Rhodes is not a devil fruit user, I know this best. This is lightning sword intent. Having said that, Koala also looked at Jun with a little doubt. As a great swordsman, how couldn't you even recognize the sword's intent? Jun's expression froze when she heard the words, and there was a hint of astonishment on her calm face. Lightning sword intent? What kind of lightning sword intent can achieve this level? Jun stared at Koala and said suspiciously, Are you sure? Of course. Koala nodded without hesitation. Jun frowned, she could see that Koala wasn't lying to her, but she couldn't believe it. As a great swordsman who has reached the pinnacle of swordsmanship, Jun's understanding of sword intent is not completely clear, but it is also very profound. This sword intent of Rhodes is too exaggerated, so exaggerated that people may even think it is a Logia lightning-type devil fruit. The three big bosses and Stussy on the high platform were also startled. It's not an ordinary power of lightning, even Leonard couldn't bear it, this power should not be underestimated. Bell felt a little terrified. With his strength, facing the power of lightning, he could only temporarily avoid the edge. Interesting kid, I'm afraid this guy didn't come for the devil fruit. Buckley smiled, while his eyes flashed fiercely. In addition to being surprised, Stussy couldn't help but speculate in her heart. Could it be that this young man is Jun's apprentice? Or her nephew or something? With such potential, if there is a chance, it is necessary to contact him as well. Thinking about it, Stussy couldn't help but lick her lips and look at the proud sword-wielding figure on the stage with fiery eyes. And at this time on the field. Looking at Leonard in the distance, Rhodes said lightly, What about now? Leonard's face blushed when he heard this, but luckily he was imbued with Busashoku Haki at the time, and no one could see it. Don't get too arrogant. He roared angrily, stepped on the ground, and rushed towards Rhodes. Scoff. Before he got too close, he slashed using his sword, and the green sword energy was shot out, heading toward Rhodes. Too slow. While he was in thunder mode, Rhodes' body speed and nerve reaction speed were enhanced, already surpassing Leonard's, and coupled with his stronger sense of Kanbunshoku Haki, Leonard couldn't win at all. However, with the support of his anger, Leonard's extreme explosive power was barely able to compete with Rhodes. The blades collided, their silhouettes staggered, and the dazzling thunder light covered everything. People could only see two looming lights and shadows colliding in the field. Only a few strong people could see through the fog and observe the situation. Gradually, as the power of lightning that enveloped the field was completely transformed from light blue to dark blue, a black figure was suddenly blasted out. He was tainted black, but not because of the Busashoku Haki. Leonard fell to the ground in the distance, his body was covered with sword marks, his clothes were tattered, and he had burn marks everywhere around his body. He reluctantly raised his head and looked at Rhodes, who didn't chase him down. It seems that only his clothes were a little messy. Leonard couldn't help but sigh lightly, but because of this tiny movement, the wound was affected, and he hissed in pain. As long as you're not a fool, you can see that Leonard is completely powerless to fight back. After that, Rhodes stood in the field, then with an extremely calm expression, he said lightly, "Who else wants to fight with me?" The whole place was dead silent. Everyone stared at Leonard, who was lying on the ground, dumbfounded. Initially, everyone felt that the moment Silver Sword Leonard decided to attack using his sword, it meant that the game was over. Unexpectedly, an unknown young swordsman who seemed to be only 17 or 18 years old, controlled the power of lightning to slash Leonard outright. All the people present were wide-eyed. Whether they were rich or powerful, everyone knew what this level of potential meant. Stussy swallowed her saliva secretly, thinking in her heart how to cooperate with Jun's actions if a conflict broke out. But after thinking about it, with Jun's strength, I'm afraid that no one can do anything to this little boy. Belle didn't think about anything. Compared with the strong pirates present, he was more like a businessman, running a small island under the banner of the Beast's pirates. Buckley's expression became much more solemn. If we can't recruit him, he must be killed in advance. This kind of potential, once he grows up, he will inevitably become an enemy. A murderous intent flashed in his eyes, and just when Buckley was about to make a move, a series of roaring explosions suddenly came from Belle's base camp in the distance, and the terrifying vibration even spread to the arena. The whole scene became a mess in an instant, and everyone hurriedly fled out for fear of being affected. What happened? Belle suddenly stood up and rushed to the base camp immediately. Seeing this, Buckley frowned slightly, gave an order to his subordinates, and followed. Belle's safety was still very important, and he can leave the rest to his subordinates. With the brothers here, the little guy shouldn't be able to get away. Thinking in his heart, he accelerated, caught up with Belle, and left the scene. Seeing that there would be no major conflict, Stussy naturally breathed a sigh of relief and quietly disappeared on the high platform. But she was looking for a chance to get to know Rhodes, a potential seed. If possible, Stussy wouldn't mind what happens next with her and this handsome young man. As the queen of the pleasure district, she has absolute confidence in her extraordinary skills to conquer a young, immature seedling. There was chaos on the field, but Rhodes made a gesture to Jun in the VIP seat and left along the flow of people. This was obviously a movement from Sabo. The three of them had already made an appointment to meet, but this time the two probably won't return to the headquarters with Sabo. Seeing Rhodes leaving, although Koala was still complaining about Sabo's chaos in her heart, she didn't show it on her face and said respectfully to Jun, "Please follow me. We will meet up outside." Jun stood up gracefully. Her tall and graceful figure made Koala feel a little inferior because she was much shorter than Jun. Of course, the most important thing is that this female great swordsman's aura left Koala subconsciously in awe. Chapter 44. Sniper. Sabo really deserves the reputation of being chaotic. Koala had a headache, and the disturbance is really big. Walking outside the arena, panicked people can be seen everywhere. Because of the previous vibration was almost felt like an earthquake. I don't know what Sabo did. Rhodes was a little curious, but he wasn't worried about Sabo's safety. That guy was really strong. After walking for a while, he came to a relatively remote street. There were gradually fewer pedestrians on the road, but Rhodes stopped and said with a light expression, "Come out." As soon as he finished speaking, a burly figure walked out of the corner. It was about a 2.5-meter tall gigantic man. He was wearing armor, a feather cloak, there were horns on his head, and he had long hair. He looked like a barbarian. Most of the official members of the Beast Pirates wore this costume. "Boss Berkeley wants to talk with you." Carl's tone was very flat, without ups and downs, but it had a hint of force that could not be rejected. As an official member of one of the Yonkos Pirates group, the strongest coder under Berkeley, actually using words before force is already a good deal for Rhodes. Rhodes' potential is indeed excellent, but as he is now, is just an empty shell. In the world of pirates, strength represents everything, not potential. "What if I don't go?" Rhodes said lightly. "That's up to you." A cold light flashed in Carl's eyes. "You alone are not enough." Rhodes lightly put his hand on the hilt of the sword, facing each other tit for tat. The atmosphere suddenly became stagnant, and the scattered passers-by on the street felt a chill to the bones as they ran away quickly. In an instant, only Rod and Carl were left on the street. With a breeze blowing by. Whoosh! The two figures disappeared in place almost at the same time, each brought a gust of wind and collided together. Kang! The long sword collided with the machete. Thunderous explosions roared inside the street, and the huge residual energy rushed away in all directions, and all the debris on the ground flew out. The blue brick ground cracked densely, and the entire street seemed to tremble. After a short stalemate, Carl gathered his strength, and a violent force erupted, directly knocking Rhodes out. Zoan-type devil fruit user. Rhodes' expression was indifferent, he lightly stepped on the air, and then floated to the ground without a trace of smoke. Most of the powerhouses of the 100 Beast Pirates have Zoan-type devil fruits. They are famous for their rough skin, thick flesh, and amazing brutal force. They are a group of big muscle tyrants who want to train their brains into muscles. It is normal for Rhodes to be suppressed in terms of strength. As soon as I keep using my forging lightning mode, this gap should be made up to the greatest extent. Most of the powerhouses in the pirate world work very hard. Rhodes does not have much advantage in hard work. If he wants to equalize the gap in physique, he can only rely on the particularity of the power of lightning. At this time, although his internal organs have been strengthened to a certain extent due to the strengthening of his physique, it is still a little short to try and use stronger lightning currents. Without more than 90% certainty, Rhodes would not dare to mess with his internal organs. It is different from muscles or bones and involves too many things. Boom! After Carl transformed into his half-beast mode, his body became larger and larger, approaching a height of 3 meters, and when he sprinted, it was like a tank rampaging with great momentum. Rhodes did not collide with him head-on, but turned on the lightning mode and waited for an opportunity. Suddenly, he narrowed his eyes and saw a weak point, rushed forward instantly, and slashed out with his sword. One sword style, Raken. Chi-chi. Under the increase of the power of lightning and the imbuing of the Busashoku Haki, the blue-black blade was wrapped in an astonishing tearing force, slashing on Carl's arm, and the scalp-tingling sound of cutting erupted. After a brief stalemate, the blade slashed through Carl's Busashoku Haki, and then slowly cut through his fur. Carl, who was resistant to guns and artillery, was still cut deeply by Rhodes' sword. Damn! Under the pain, Carl's eyes turned red like a mad lion and slashed at Rhodes with his machete. Whoosh! Rhodes did not hesitate and instantly stepped back. He is not a rough-skinned monster like Carl, he will die if he takes this hit. But at this moment, Rhodes' Kanbunshoku trembled violently, his eyebrows tingled, and his heart seemed to pop out. Danger! I'm gonna die! Fortunately, Rhodes' response was extremely fast, and was barely able to keep up with that information thanks to the activation of the power of lightning. Therefore, in just a split second, he responded, leaning slightly to the left inconceivably. At the same time, a pitch-black bullet, like lightning pierced through the sky, shot in front of him in an instant, rubbing the skin of his forehead and flying over. A trace of blood slid from his face. Rhodes could feel the burning pain coming from his forehead, and he could even smell a little burning sensation in his head, but his expression did not fluctuate at all. Instead, he became more and more indifferent, giving the sense of extreme danger, more dangerous than facing a beast in the wild. A sniper. It's been a long time since I was hurt. Trick, prick, prick. The power of lightning seemed to be provoked, frantically agitated, and continued to spread as if a lightning field was formed here. The next moment, Rhodes stepped forward and instantly flickered like lightning tens of meters in the air, and crashed into the roof of a building not far away. Boom! Accompanied by the sound of buildings collapsing. Before he had time to go to support his brother, Carl saw his brother Carlo being blasted out, spewing a mouthful of blood in the air, his face flushed, his hair standing on one end, and he fell heavily to the ground. Are you okay? Carl hurriedly ran to the front and asked in a low voice while staring vigilantly in Rhodes' direction. Carlo's face was blue and white, with a hint of shock and disbelief mixed in. He was found by Rhodes and ended in 1 second. After all, snipers are not very good at close-range combat. The most unbelievable thing for him was that the shot he was so patient to take didn't hit. It only rubbed his head a little. But that was enough for Rhodes to determine his location. It's so fucking unrealistic, how could this kid react? Carlo cursed and stood up enduring the pain, slightly behind Carl. This isn't good, let's contact Boss Berkeley quickly. Carlo glanced at Rhodes, who jumped from the roof, thought for a while, and decided to call for reinforcements first. He wasn't a thick-head like Carl, he has a clearer understanding of the situation. With the strength shown by Rhodes, even if the two of them are stronger, they will never be able to kill them. Hi! A specially made signal bomb flew out of his hand, flying at an extremely fast speed, flying high into the sky like lightning, and then exploded into a bright red emergency signal for help. Hi! How troublesome! Rhodes frowned slightly. He was confident enough to kill the two brothers, but he wasn't sure that he could do it in a short time. After all, the combination of one fighting really close and the other shooting from distance was difficult to deal with. Moreover, most of the powerhouses in the pirate world had tenacious vitality. Chapter 45. Jun's Slash. Bell's Base. Bell and Berkeley ran quickly until they reached the base, and then learned the ins and outs of the matter. It is said that a mysterious man detonated a large number of explosives, blasting the castle and freeing the imprisoned slaves. Damn it, where are the guards? Bell clenched his fists with an ugly face because he found that some of the information he had hidden in his residence was lost. Lord Duenas was defeated. That mysterious man is very powerful, and he knocked Lord Duenas out with one punch. We couldn't stop him at all. The scene was too chaotic, the man was too fast, we lost him. The guards were talking at length, trying to clear the way. After all, they all had to take responsibility for this incident. Bell's face was ashen, but the worry and fear in his heart subsided slightly. It shouldn't be the world government. If the world government finds out his identity, the people sent would be here only to kill him and clean up. Is it someone from the underground world? While Bell was thinking, his expression suddenly changed, because he saw an emergency call for help in the distance. The two brothers couldn't take that young man down. Berkeley was also shocked and in disbelief. Carlos and Carl are two brothers, one is an animal devil fruit person, and the other is a terrifying sniper. Together, their combat effectiveness is very strong. In the face of an opponent at the level of Silver Sword Leonard, they can easily subdue and kill him at ease. In this sea area, they are famous for their reputation. They even once fought against the Whitebeard pirates, and they are truly powerful. He didn't expect that a young man will force them to send a signal for help. I'll go. Berkeley rushed in that direction without hesitation. His speed was extremely fast. His huge and burly body smashed through all obstacles, like a human-shaped beast, trampling the ground and shaking the pedestrians on the road. At the same time, the entire island was moving on the wind, and the members of the beast pirates scattered in all directions were heading here. If Rhodes insists on killing the two brothers, he would definitely be surrounded by heavy siege, and if he's dragged until Berkeley's arrival, his life would even be in danger. Don't run, if you coward kid. Although Carl's reaction was slow, he was not a fool. He quickly understood Carlo's intention and rushed up to Rhodes. At the same time, he made a mockery to provoke him. Carlo silently raised the sniper rifle, deterring him from a distance, attracting most of Rhodes' attention. A powerful sniper is terrifying. They use specially made firearms that have been modified. The bullets are enhanced by the Busashoku haki. Thus, their ability to break defense is extremely powerful. Moreover, the snipers usually have strong Kanbunshoku haki. Most of the pirates will be equipped with snipers, such as the red-haired pirates Usopp. Forget it, I'm out of here. Seeing that there was no hope of killing them that quickly, Rhodes did not force it. There was no need to put himself in danger for these two pricks. But at this moment, a smiling voice suddenly came from not far away. Looks like you're in trouble. Rhodes turned his head to look and saw that Sabo was sitting casually on a roof, looking at him with a half-smile. Having you here won't do me any favor. Rhodes satirized lightly. Sabo is a strong physique, perhaps stronger than Rhodes at this time, but in the face of Carl, a rough-skinned muscle tyrant, it is difficult to achieve results in a short period of time. Sabo smiled, and his figure disappeared instantly. Rhodes only heard a loud bang. Carl's body suddenly froze for a moment, and then was blasted away, and slammed heavily on the ground in the distance. The ground was shaken, and the sound of rocks falling from nearby buildings could be heard. Sabo withdrew his fist lightly, without even looking at Carl, and smiled at Rhodes. Let's go, the beast pirates are coming soon. At this moment, a pitch-black bullet came out of a hole like a poisonous dragon, pierced through the air instantly, and struck Sabo like lightning. When Rhodes sensed the bullet, he saw that Sabo had gently raised his steel pipe, blocking the bullet in front of him. Ding! In just an instant, the jet-black bullet, which was wrapped in powerful energy, was shot and blocked by Sabo's steel pipe. At this time, the sound of gunshots came later. Seeing this, Rhodes narrowed his eyes slightly. Sabo's Kanbunshoku was so strong. Carlo, on the other hand, was completely stunned. What the hell? Why are more terrifying young people appearing at this place all of a sudden? The other one just dodged his shot, but this one blocked it directly with a weapon. Carlo was shocked, very frightened, and did not dare to act rashly. Because if these two people made a move, Carlo might be able to delay them until the arrival of the reinforcements, but he could not escape death, or at least he will be seriously injured. There was a faint whistling sound in the distance as if thousands of troops were approaching. The faces of the two brothers were delighted. With more people, they would have the confidence to stop Rhodes and the other kid. But at this moment, a cold female voice that seemed to come from above the 9 heavens emitted. "How dare you try to hurt my students?" Before he could finish his words, majestic, sakura-colored sword energy that seemed to be invisible, suddenly fell from the sky. Before the sword chi arrived, the terrifying sword pressure came first, and the air became thick as water. Carl and his brother could only barely lift their heads, and their wide eyes were full of despair and fear. Boom! Nothing can describe the sharpness of this sword energy. The majestic sword chi fell down like a meteor, crushed Carlo into powder almost instantly, and then cut into the ground without stopping. Under the incredible gaze of Rhodes, Sabo, and Koala, the nearly 100-meter-long street instantly formed a bottomless of 5 or 6-meter-wide abyss crack. What a terrifying power! Sabo looked down at the abyss not far from his feet, only a meter or two away from him. He couldn't help but swallow, and the cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He had a strong Kanbunshoku haki, he could predict Carlo's sniping, but he couldn't react this time at all. If the sword chi was aimed at him, I'm afraid his ending would not be better than Carl and his brother. Rhodes raised his head blankly and looked at the tall and slender woman standing proudly in the sky. He was completely overwhelmed with shock and could not speak. Jun is the second strongest person he has ever seen, but this is the first time he has witnessed such a powerhouse take action with his own eyes. Even though there are many scenes in his memory that are even more terrifying than this picture, the shock of witnessing it with his own eyes cannot be described in words. Koala was also stunned, as if petrified. No matter how smart she was completely shocked by this near-mythical power. It is said that Rayleigh slashed an island with one slash. I thought it was just an exaggeration, but now it seems. She swallowed her saliva, and then she rejoiced again because this was Rhodes' future teacher. Once he learns under her, his swordsmanship will definitely improve by leaps and bounds. At this time, Jun slowly fell down, her black dress swayed slightly, her smooth black hair moved with the wind, and her charming face still had a casual expression, as if the damage caused by this slash was only normal. Chapter 46. Can you fly? When Buckley rushed to the scene and saw this shocking abyss rift, he chose to follow his own heart and stop the chase. This decision came right from the heart. Let's hurry up and report this news. Buckley was a little flustered. A sword that can cause such damage can only be the sword of a great swordsman. Such a great enemy is simply not something that he can handle, it must be at least one of 3 calamities. As for the dead brothers, he could only mourn for them. At this time, inside the hotel. What? You're actually Jun's student? Sabo was stunned by this shocking news. Please, brother, we are the Revolutionary Army. Although we are not opposed to the Marines, it is too much to be the student of a vice-captain. Sabo didn't know what to say, so in the end, he could only say, nice job. It was actually Jun's slash from earlier that shocked Sabo so much that he was unable to refute it at all. I'm afraid I can't go back to the headquarters with you. Rhodes shrugged helplessly, Master doesn't seem to have much time to teach me, probably she will only do it for 3 months or so. After all, Jun is a candidate for the admiral position, and she doesn't have much free time. Besides, Rhodes is not an amateur. Jun reckons that 3 months should be enough to teach him what she wants to teach. Well, that's a hassle. Sabo pondered slightly. How rare it's to meet a great swordsman, but Rhodes managed to make her accept him as a student, which is naturally a good thing, even Dragon won't have too many opinions. The enemy of the revolutionary army is the world government, and the world aristocrat the celestial dragons, not the marines that maintain the order of the sea. Besides, in such an era, no one can stop a person from becoming stronger. Well, we're not in a hurry to go back to the headquarters. It happened that I got a lot of information from Bell's castle before, some ancient secret, and some information about the recent events that occurred in the sea. It seems that an underground killer organization wants to target a force working under us. It's not far from here. We will just help them. During this period of time, you should train hard, and when you are finished, we will go back to the headquarters together. Sabo said this with a sincere smile. We are partners, we came out together, and of course, we have to go back together. Koala nodded again and again. That's how it should be. How can we go back first? When Rhodes heard the words, his expression changed slightly. Seeing that both of them had the same expression, he stopped persuading them and nodded. I will contact you when the time comes. Good. Sabo smiled, patted Rhodes on the shoulder, and said, "Word hard, maybe you will catch up with me after you practice hard for 3 months. By that time, I won't even break a sweat fighting you." Rhodes said with a smile, but he seemed to be full of confidence. Forget about how strong his swordsmanship will be. In these 3 months of training, his lightning power will definitely make him step to a level comparable to that of a vice admiral. At that time, I'm afraid Sabo will no longer have a chance against him. After all, the power of lightning is extremely powerful, almost invincible. The three exchanged contact information and then went to the hotel lobby together. Jun was sitting there casually, sipping black tea, as elegant as the purest nobleman, attracting the attention of many men. Have you finally finished? Jun lightly put down the teacup and glanced at Rhodes with her beautiful eyes. Rhodes nodded. In that case, let's go. Jun took the three and slowly came to the shore of Kronos Island. This is a cliff, beneath which the rushing sea slaps tirelessly the standing reefs. Can you fly? The sea breeze blew her skirt, and Jun casually pulled back her hair and asked. Rhodes was slightly startled and said. I can walk. Use Jeppo. Then follow me. Jun didn't ask why Rhodes knows how to use Jeppo, she didn't seem to care about it at all. She jumped lightly, and then came into the air. Rhodes only had time to say goodbye to Sabo and Koala, and then hurriedly followed. The two of them seemed to be walking in the void, getting closer to the horizon step by step. Are they going to use Jeppo to return to the warship? The corners of Sabo's mouth twitched slightly, and he couldn't help feeling a little bit of pain for Rhodes. Jeppo put a great burden on physical strength. He could imagine what pain Rhodes would encounter. Koala also smiled, but there was a look of anticipation in her beautiful eyes. How high is Rhodes' talent? Last time he left her sight for 5 months he came back stronger than the reserve force's cotters. This time she won't see him for 3 months. And she doesn't know how much stronger this guy will become. Although everyone's growth rate will slow down in the later stages. I don't know why I always feel that Rhodes does not have such limitation. Looking at the 2 black dots that gradually disappeared from sight using Jeppo, Koala murmured softly, Sabo, I think you are about to be surpassed by him. Sabo was slightly startled when he heard the words, and wanted to refute, but suddenly realized that it seemed to be the case. Along the way, Rhodes beheaded Lancelot, clashed with Squard, and managed to escape unharmed. This time, he defeated the Silver Sword Leonard, and then he fought against the 2 brothers from the Beast Pirates without falling behind. This series of records and performances are already very close to what he accomplished, the most talented member of the Revolutionary Army. Involuntarily, a trace of urgency and motivation rose in Sabo's heart. This is the first time he has felt this kind of feeling from a peer of the same age. Between the sea and the sky, as far as the eye can see, is the blue of the vast sea. Master, are you sure we're not going around in circles? Rhodes reluctantly followed, grinding his teeth. It has been more than half a day since they left Kronos Island. During this time, whenever Rhodes' exhaustion eased off, he walked behind Jun using the Jeppo. But once he's tired, he had to swim in the sea to keep up with Jun. The sun was scorching hot, and his clothes were dry and wet, wet and dry, so he was really embarrassed. We're almost there, we're almost there. Jun's face was expressionless, and she only kept saying these words. Rhodes was in a hurry, and he used too much force on his legs and feet. He lost power and fell to the sea numerous times. When he used to practice the Rokushiki, he didn't spend too much effort on the Jeppo, he just wanted to learn it so he can fly, and his proficiency was naturally not high. Phew! Rhodes took a deep breath, he really wanted to pay her back hundreds of times for torturing him. You seem to be having some bad thoughts. Jun's indifferent and cold voice came, trembling Rhodes' body instantly. The extreme fatigue made his mind a little unstable, but some thoughts were leaked. Looking at Jun's slightly suspicious eyes, Rhodes smiled dryly, and quickly calmed down, talking nonsense in a serious manner. I'm just thinking, what kind of ship is Master's warship? I haven't seen a Marine's warship before. Jun squinted his eyes and suddenly felt like he was cocooning himself. He can be really cute once he exposes his thoughts. You will see soon. As soon as the voice fell, a huge black shadow appeared in the faint mist in the distance. Chapter 47. Teaching. Jun, as a vice-captain, and one of the candidates to be the next admiral, was equipped with a Marine's warship of the highest specification. It was as huge as a hill. The densely packed cannon looked terrifying, and its towering sail was covering the clouds and the sun. It looks like a moving fortress. If they're ever faced with an ordinary pirate ship, it can be said that the artillery fire alone will make them cry. The surprise was evident on Rhodes' face, but deep inside he was actually calm. As a reincarnated soul, there were many warships that he have seen in his previous life, which are bigger than this. Jun was quite satisfied with Rhodes' expression. In order to completely own this talented student, she did everything she could. She killed the two brothers he struggled to defeat with one slash, leaving a bottomless abyss behind her, showing the insurmountable strength of the great swordsman, and then after she crushed Rhodes' arrogance on the way, she finally brought out her expensive car. Let's go down. Jun brought Rhodes to the top deck of the warship. As soon as he landed, Rhodes sat down against the railing, not even wanting to move a hair. Although it has only been half a day, his physical and mental energy was already exhausted, and they were on the verge of collapsing. At this time, he just wanted to sleep until the end of the world. As soon as he sat down, he fell into sleep not long after. Jun glanced at Rhodes, but didn't say anything, but faced the adjutant who came to pick her up. Jun Dono, who is this? The female marine soldier, Eleanor asked curiously. She obviously did not expect that Jun would bring a young man back when she was just out to play. Could it be that he's her love? Eleanor's eyes were full of gossip. Get aside. Jun knocked Eleanor on her forehead and said angrily, this is my student. Student? Eleanor rubbed her forehead, muttering in her heart, could it be that she's planning to play a part in a teacher-student romance story? Sure enough, older women are provocative. At this time, when they learned that Jun had returned, a bunch of Marines gathered on the top deck, and all of them were female soldiers. These were like Jun's personal guards, and they were working directly under her command. Master Jun's student. The vice-captain actually accepted an apprentice. Hey, this little guy is quite handsome, but he's a little thin. The guards looked at Rhodes who was sleeping on the deck and whispered. The news quickly spread throughout the warships, and all the Marines felt a little incredible. The female guards were curious about the young boy, while the male Marines were a bit frustrated. Because the female Marines on the Jun's warship were all living on the highest level, they were accepted by her as guards, and they were all women, so there was nothing to say. But this new student of hers is now also living on the top floor, which really made them envy and jealous. Jun came out to the deck again and had already changed into her standard Marine's clothing. With the word justice printed on the back of her cloak, Jun moved with the wind. Changing to these clothes made her lose a bit of grace and nobility, but now she looked more heroic and valiant, like a Valkyrie. Has anything happened recently? Jun took the black tea handed over by Eleanor and asked casually. Well. Holding the document, Eleanor pondered for a while and said, everything is fairly stable. The only big event is the showdown between Fire Fist Ace and the Knight of the Sea, Jinbi. This battle lasted for 5 days and 5 nights, with no winner or loser. Later, Fire Fist Ace was captured by the Whitebeard pirates. We don't know what the final result will be. After speaking, Eleanor was quiet for a while, then couldn't help but curiously ask about Jun's experience these days. Jun glanced at her sharply, but she still answered her, because even though Jun was her superior, she actually treated Eleanor as her little sister. 3 geniuses at once. Eleanor frowned slightly, feeling that Jun is being a little reckless, and then immediately said, how can you rashly accept apprentices, without even checking his background? Jun gently put down the teacup and said lightly. Identity, background, what does it have to do with me? I'm interested in him and nothing else. There was indescribable confidence and arrogance in Jun's tone. She didn't care about Rhodes' identity at all, so what if he was a pirate? Or even from the Revolutionary Army? As a super powerhouse who has stood at the top of swordsmanship, this is her right, who dares to stop her from accepting apprentices? Just like Garp's family, the guy's son is the leader of the Revolutionary Army. Is there anyone who dares to say anything to Garp? In this world, strength decides everything. All right. Eleanor was speechless for the while, and then she moved on to a more important subject. We have also received an order from the headquarters. We have to go to the G5 base and hold over the defense area with Admiral Kizaru. He can wait, anyway, he is also in the base. Jun took a sip out of her tea and said, let's go to Fire Island. My body hasn't been soaked in a hot spring for ages. I will also be teaching my apprentice on the way there. But, that's not good. Eleanor was trying to say that it wasn't good, but her expression was full of longing. Jun glanced at this subordinate who never learned how to hide her true emotions, and then ignored her. She then narrowed her eyes slightly and began to think about the next tutorial. After thinking about it, 3 months is still too short. If you learn slowly, it doesn't matter in 5 or 6 months, just let Kizaru get off work. Jun thought indifferently. The next day, in the cabin, Jun, who was instructing Rhodes' swordsmanship, said indifferently. Purely use your swordsmanship to attack me. Yes. Rhodes concentrated his mind, stared at Jun with burning eyes, then took a step forward and kept waving his sword. Or stab, or cut, or chop, or strike. However, no matter how tricky the angles were, no matter how fast or strong the attack was, Jun was able to dodge it, and even took the time to hit him a few times with the body of her sword, causing him to feel numb. Rhodes was tormented for half an hour, his whole body was slapped red by Jun's sheath. At some point, he started wondering whether he had offended Jun in some way. Jun finally stopped and let out a light breath. Do you know why I can hit you, but you can't hit? Because Master is a great swordsman, with quick responses, strong strength, and a stronger haki than mine. Rhodes calmly patted his horse. This is just one aspect. Do you know who is the worst poker player? Rhodes. Could it be that Jun and Fujitora both like to play cards? It's a novice. How do you not know that? This is your problem, you're overthinking stuff. Jun looked at Rhodes speechlessly and said, a novice often shows his emotions and anger when playing poker. When he gets a good card, he will be high-spirited, and when he gets a bad card, he's downcast. These kinds of people are easy to figure out, and winning against them is inevitable. Rhodes reacted instantly. You mean, I'm revealing my intentions before I attack? Your eyes are too focused on the target you want to attack. An experienced person can see through your thoughts, predict your attack route, dodge in advance, or counter-attack you without even needing to be stronger than you. Of course, you usually have the power of thunder to cover this up, and your speed is very fast, thus ordinary people can't see through it. Rhodes had a feeling of awakening. After all, no one taught him before. He only fought a few battles, and he didn't learn many skills when it comes to swordsmanship. Then what should I do? Face your opponent head-on, observe from the corner of your eye, hide your thoughts, and don't reveal your intentions. Now come at me again. Chapter 48. The Hot Springs. The situation in the New World is complicated. The Yonko are supposedly ruling the world, but there are also many neutral and chaotic places, which are under the control of some big pirates, noble families, and underground organizations. With this towering warship of Jun, as long they don't enter the territory of the Yonko, their sailing will be absolutely safe and stable. As for ordinary pirates, they will only look at the wind and flee when they see them. Jun observed Rhodes in the past few days to understand all aspects of his abilities very deeply. Rhodes' progress was very fast, and in a few days, he corrected some flaws in his swordsmanship with the help of Jun and got more powerful. At this time, the warship has already arrived at its destination. It was an island with a very special landform environment. Looking from a distance, you can see a volcano standing like a pillar in the center of the island, surrounded by a large jungle. The sound of apes and tigers roaring incessantly could be heard from a distance. Obviously, there are a lot of beasts living on this island, and the intensity is much stronger than the trial islands specially divided by the Revolutionary Army headquarters for the reserve forces. I'm not sure whether this volcano is dead or alive. Rhodes was slightly attentive. When he saw the volcano, he thought of magma and Akainu. It is said that Admiral Akainu's ability is to imitate the eruption of a volcano, not only the magma of extremely high temperature but also the explosive impact of the volcanoes. We don't know either. After discovering this special island a few years ago, Vice Captain Jun will come here to rest every once in a while. Eleanor's eyes shone with light, she seemed very excited. Not only her but also most of the other guards. The New World is different from the Grand Line, and the Four Seas. The situation in the Four Seas is almost entirely under the control of the Marines and the world government. Their domain is slightly weaker in Grand Line, but their control is still strong. There are many Marines bases and branches, and some neutral islands that are also biased towards the world government. In such an environment, if the Marines want to get some supplies or rest, it is easy to find a place. But in the New World, things are quite different. The New World is the territory of the Yonko. There are many arrogant people who dare not give a face to the Marines, and there are very few Marine bases. In such an environment, it is a bit troublesome for Marines warships to even get supplies, not to mention play and rest. Often, they can only have a good rest once they're instructed to defend a zone. However, as long as you have the guts. Oh, no. As long as you are strong enough, you can do whatever you want. Since the hot spring was discovered here, Jun has been coming here often, and Eleanor and other subordinates have also enjoyed it. Leaving the necessary guards behind on the warship, Jun led Rhodes and the others to the island. The Marine soldiers in the New World are all elites, and they can serve as school-level officers if they were placed on any other bases. Jun's personal guards are even more fierce, and the beasts who dared to stand in their way were basically beaten to death and kept for dinner. Passing all the way, Rhodes was stunned to see that there was an avenue leading to the top, he could even vaguely see the warships in the distance. Soon, the group came to the bottom of the volcano. There were many houses scattered here and there, and you could see the mist of water emerging from the gaps between the houses. This should be the hot spring house. The team gradually split. Seeing that Jun didn't speak of any orders, Rhodes silently followed behind. Gradually, Rhodes suddenly discovered that only Jun and her personal guard were left beside him. No wonder he could feel countless fiery gazes coming from some of the men that came with him, eager to replace him. Rhodes pouted, "Be envious, be jealous, but it's useless." Snort. "Boy, do you really plan to take a hot spring with us?" As they approached the hot spring house, Jun turned her head and looked at him with a half-smile. Eleanor and the other guards laughed and laughed. "He looks so immature and harmless, I didn't expect it to be such a little perv. Little handsome guy, big sister doesn't mind being with you, come if you want. Come on, come in, don't be afraid." The guards stood in the hot spring house, and some of them even took off their clothes, revealing a large piece of white skin, which was eye-catching. Naturally, there were no special bath towels here, thus, everyone jumped in naked. Rhodes was moved by this scene, but thinking of the tragic consequences, he silently turned and left this paradise, looking for a hot spring on his own. This place has the potential to develop a volcanic hot spring resort. It didn't take long for Rhodes to find an open-air natural hot spring. The hot spring pool was irregularly round and steaming. Rhodes took off his clothes and entered the hot spring. The spring water with a suitable temperature nourished his skin and relieved his fatigue, which made him breathe a sigh of relief. This is the first time he has ever been in a hot spring in his past and present life. The hot spring pool that Rhodes was looking for was high in terrain and had a very broad field of vision. The hot spring houses at the foot of the mountain were all within sight. And from such a high place, Rhodes could see a lot of, let's say, beautiful scenes. Sure enough, the natural training of the Marines is the most efficient way to breed this kind of existence. Rhodes murmured, then quickly looked away, and out of the corner of his eyes looked at the deepest, largest hot spring house. Talking about breeds, he had to sneak a look at the highest bred. Even with the steam all over the place, he could still vaguely see. The next 2 days, Jun didn't start teaching Rhodes immediately but was completely focused on relaxing and resting. After she regained all of her energy, she called Rhodes and came to open space. "In terms of swordsmanship, your advantage lies in the perfect mastery of your concentration. Most swordsmen are not as good as you. Jun held the practice sword and said lightly, "The shortcomings are also obvious. Your swordsmanship is too poor. It looks like you're a complete novice. Sometimes it's really hard for me to understand how such a swordsman like you can comprehend such a powerful thunder sword intent." Speaking of which, Jun couldn't help but show some doubts. She was really puzzled, but in the end, she could only blame it on Rhodes' personal talent. Anyway, there wasn't any other explanation, so she didn't bother to care so much. Rhodes nodded slightly, expressing his approval. In this respect, it is undeniable that the talent he unlocked from the Book of Knowledge has allowed him to step into the realm of a swordsman in just 3 months. However, even though it also boosted his swordsmanship's basic training, it wasn't too exaggerated, so he still had to work hard. Moreover, during the last 3 months, Rhodes' main focus was on his physical strength and haki, and he inevitably ignored his swordsmanship training. That seemingly skilled and accurate swordsmanship of Rhodes, in the eyes of great swordsmen like Jun, is of course full of flaws. Even his most basic skills are a little out of shape. This so-called great swordsmanship is lackluster. It depends entirely on the terrifying power of lightning and his speed. The foundation of swordsmanship is very important. Without a solid enough foundation, it is almost impossible to comprehend the profound meaning of sword and step into the realm of a great swordsman. Although the realm of a great swordsman is difficult to describe in words, it is ultimately inseparable from the basics of swordsmanship. Jun said softly, and then set the amount of training for Rhodes during this time. "We will first set a small target for you. You need to do 100,000 strikes per day. If you can't do it, then you will stab 100,000 times, and if you can't do it, then you will go back to striking 100,000 times." After she finished speaking, she smiled lightly. A student who knows the basics can always train on his own. Rhodes' face darkened at that time. Chapter 49. 3 months. In the distance, Eleanor and a group of personal guards were secretly watching Rhodes. They wanted to know what kind of a man could actually make Jun, who always thinks highly of herself, accept him as an apprentice. "What's going on here? Vice Captain, Jun is actually teaching the basics. My god, did she got deceived by his handsomeness? Is our Vice Captain finally ushering in spring?" The guards chattered and kept complaining. "He's starting to practice the basics at this age." Eleanor felt a little strange. Devil fruit is a shortcut to becoming stronger. If you get a powerful fruit, you can become stronger with a little development. However, physical strength and swordsmanship are different, especially the last. Almost any swordsman starts to learn swordsmanship from a very young age, and by his age they would have a solid foundation. She had never heard of someone who picked swordsmanship halfway through and actually succeeded. Maybe Jun Dano is just interested in the other qualities that this man has. Eleanor was disappointed. She thought Rhodes was an outstanding swordsman genius. After watching him for a while, she quickly lost interest and went back to the hot springs to warm her body. The polishing of the basics of swordsmanship was very boring. Repeating an action 100 times, or nearly 1,000 times, is not something normal people can endure, not to mention Rhodes, who needed to do 100,000 strikes. This will not only destruct his physical strength, but it's also a test of his will. A swordsman's strike is not about power, or you will just be a reckless man. The most important thing for a swordsman is accuracy. It doesn't matter if it's 1 slash or thousands of strikes, they must be all accurate. Once your 100,000th strike is as accurate as your first, your swordsmanship basics will be qualified. Jun's words echoed in Rhodes' mind, while his expression was extremely determined, and his eyes very focused. His approach to training was very serious. He can even be called obsessed. This was a world where martial artists are respected, and one's strength can face an army, a country, and even suppress an era. But strength cannot come out of thin air, and it takes arduous and long practice to be acquired. Rhodes knew this very well. Rhodes swung his sword again and again, constantly fine-tuning every strike, while fully mobilizing every inch of his body's strength into it. Under this constant adjustment, Rhodes' sword-slashing movements became more harmonious and smoother, and gradually he had a masterful demeanor aura around him. An hour later, due to the fatigue of his arm muscles, Rhodes' sword-swinging motion got slightly deformed. He didn't notice it himself, but Jun noticed it right away. "Pay attention to your stance, and maintain your focused state. The angle of your slashes became a little off." Jun's expressionlessly criticized him. But deep inside she was in disbelief. Because Rhodes' progress was so fast. It was as if a great swordsman had been reborn and now he is just regaining the power he lost in the past step by step. Honing one's basics of swordsmanship is easier said than done, and often requires years of perseverance. Even with her, a great swordsman, teaching by hand, the speed of the training would not be as fast as it is now. Jun has even thought about extending the training period that she has set previously. Unexpectedly, Rhodes once again stunned her with his unlimited potential. The beginning was a bit rough, but now he's doing 10,000 slashes without making a single mistake, and he achieved all of this in less than a month. It seems that it won't be more than 3 months. Jun's charming face was expressionless, but there was a touch of loss and sadness in her heart. This feeling is amazing. With great interest, she planned a lot of tutorials and was even willing to go to battle in person, trying her best to carve this rough jade. But she didn't expect that this piece of rough jade would evolve on its own and remove impurities on its own. Without even using any effort, it just began to bloom. Excellent students will certainly make teachers happy, but too good students can also be disappointing because it will make the teacher feels that their teaching is worthless. Jun's thoughts were very complicated, but Rhodes didn't notice any of that. He was immersed in his sword training. He loved swordsmanship, he felt that he and the sword shared an inexplicable fate. Otherwise, the first talent of the Book of Knowledge would not be swordsmanship. One strike, a second strike, another strike. Drops of sweat dripped from his forehead, but it didn't bother Rhodes at all. He waved his sword tirelessly, looking for the most suitable feeling. Jun said that the true meaning of the sword that great swordsmen understood was derived from the foundation of swordsmanship. This sentence seems mysterious and elusive, but it actually gave Rhodes a clear goal. Since the true meaning of swords is so mysterious that it cannot be captured or described in words, then the basics of swordsmanship should be exercised to the extreme, and only then the true meaning of sword will emerge on its own. Following the saying, go with the flow. Rhodes didn't force it, this was the right step into the realm of the great swordsman, nothing is better, or faster. Of course, Jun didn't only teach him the basics of swordsmanship, but how to use it in actual combat. Swordsmanship is not the same as physical strength. If you want to determine one's progress, only actual combat can give you that clear image. Only endless battles can refine one's swordsmanship, such as Zoro's battles with apes. Of course, Jun didn't have such a group of apes who were proficient in swordsmanship, so she could only go into battle in person, pressing her strength to fight against Rhodes. This kind of sparring. Of course, it is impossible for Rhodes to win. Even though Jun is holding back, she could easily abuse him. The two's understanding of swordsmanship is not at the same level at all. Most of the time, Jun is just torturing Rhodes. Rhodes spent most of his days practicing the basics of swordsmanship. Occasionally, he fought against Jun, then checked his swordsmanship with her. At night, he used the lightning forging, and of course, went into hot springs whenever he had the chance to relieve the exhaustion. 3 months passed quickly. In the open space, Eleanor looked at Rhodes expressionlessly, and said lightly, Jun Dano is resting today, so I came instead to teach you a lesson or two. She was holding a delicate-looking thin sword, similar to the Western sword. People who use this type of sword are usually very good at stabbing. Thorn is the most lethal sword stance, and the fastest, but also the most dangerous. Because this stance exposes the most flaws, and it is easy to be caught by others. Rhodes was slightly surprised, he didn't expect that this girl, who seemed rather quiet and had a low sense of presence, would turn out to be a female swordsman. He didn't have any contempt. Being able to become Jun's adjutant, Eleanor's strength is at least comparable to that of a rear admiral. Is it okay? Come at me. Are you sure? Rhodes confirmed again. Young people these days surely talk a lot of nonsense, come at me, means come at me. You really think you can hurt me? Eleanor said impatiently. She clearly doesn't have a good impression of Rhodes. Her expectations were too high at the beginning, she thought that Rhodes was such a genius, and would his skills left Jun with no choice but to accept him. Unexpectedly, Rhodes came to this island and started to practice the basics of swordsmanship. Then here I come. After how she treated him, of course, Rhodes will not be humble anymore. With just a bit of effort, he suddenly rushed out like a phantom. Chapter 50. Swordsmanship. After 3 months of practice, Rhodes has mastered all kinds of sword slashes quite proficiently. At this time, he rushed to Eleanor with a stab. Eleanor was slightly startled, but she didn't lose her calmness. She leaned slightly and moved her feet to avoid Rhodes' attack. However, her initial carelessness caused the loose clothes she was wearing to be torn open with a stab, revealing a piece of whiteness. Rhodes did not pursue, but took a step back and said a little embarrassedly, "Do you need a change of clothes?" Rhodes didn't predict such an outcome. If it were him and Jun, this simple stab would have been very easily dodged, and she could have even counterattacked him. Rhodes was even thinking about how to deal with the counterattack. Unexpectedly, he suddenly heard the tearing sound of clothes. It wasn't intentional. Eleanor tried her best to maintain her indifference, but she couldn't suppress the restlessness in her heart. As a veteran swordsman who has been practicing swordsmanship for more than 20 years, she was hit by a newbie who had just practiced the basics of swordsmanship for only 3 months. If other guards saw it, she would probably end up being mocked for the rest of her life. She couldn't accept it at all. Eleanor took a deep breath and said expressionlessly, "Go on." "You sure?" "Certainly." Eleanor resisted the urge to run away and rushed up first. Although she was careless, this simple collision just now was enough to prove Rhodes' strength. This time she attacked with 70% of her strength. The blade cut through the air, emitting the sounds of chi and chi. Eleanor was surprised to find that under her pressure, Rhodes actually seemed to be able to avoid with ease. Back and forth, her lips pursed tightly, her face became colder and colder, and she gradually channeled all of her strength. In a blink of an eye, the two clashed dozens of times. The speed of the two was getting faster and faster. Normal people wouldn't be able to see their movements. They would only see two shadows intersecting each other in the field, constantly changing their positions. The blades were flashing, and occasionally they collide with each other and exploded. There was an amazing sound of gold and iron symphony, and sparks were scattering everywhere. Even when she blocked his sword chi, the scattered energy would still destroy the open space and make it a mess, with mud flying all over the place and cracks opening on the ground. The more she fought, the more frightened Eleanor became. In the end, she had to accept the fact that she was completely unable to suppress Rhodes by simply sparring with him. What she found was that Rhodes's swordsmanship foundation was extremely solid, and she couldn't help but admire many of his responses. "This is incredible, Rhodes' swordsmanship is not inferior to her. This guy really only started practicing the basics of swordsmanship 3 months ago." Eleanor realized that she had misunderstood, he's actually a genius. At this time, Rhodes felt quite relaxed. If the sparring with Jun was the hell-level difficulty, then the sparring with Eleanor could only be considered difficult, or even inferior. A great swordsman and a swordsman are completely different from each other. Jun's sword stance has a feeling of making something out of nothing. It feels light and does not contain much power, but it gives Rhodes an extremely dangerous and ubiquitous feeling. Eleanor, on the other hand, looks fancy, with many different angles and shadows, which can confuse people, but in fact, it was easily cracked by Rhodes. Suddenly, a soft cry was suddenly heard. Eleanor, who had just passed by his side, suddenly turned around quickly. Her slender waist was like a spring, bursting out with far more than usual strength, and her muscles flowed like water. Secret sword, swallow. The speed of this flash was extremely fast, and it stabbed straight through the gap. But Rhodes, who has been poked by Jun's training sword countless times, wouldn't have been hit by such a trick. He just took a small step, and with a slight swing of his blade, he parried this extremely sharp sword move. The so-called sword secret moves are a series of sword moves created by swordsmen based on their own sword styles, their own strength, and even special abilities, such as Zoro's 3000 worlds. Sword moves cannot be imitated. In other words, even if you try to learn them, you will end up taking another path because of the differences in various details. Just like Zoro's 3-sword style, only a few can use it, because most people lack a good set of teeth. You not only must be able to withstand strong force, but also manage to speak with a sword in your mouth. Rhodes was deeply impressed by this. She really deserves to be Jun's guard. At this time, Eleanor missed, and her attack stopped. At this time she was panting, looking at Rhodes, who was calm, as if nothing had happened. Her face was flushed. She had an unbreakable pride, but she couldn't help but ask. "Did you really just start learning the basics of swordsmanship 3 months ago?" In the end, she couldn't bear it any longer and asked. At the same time, she couldn't help but feel worried. If 3 months is all that it takes for others to catch up with more than 20 years of hard work, then she was afraid that she would be autistic. Hearing Eleanor's question, Rhodes blinked and said, "That's not true." The first half of the sentence made Eleanor slightly relieved, but the second half of the sentence made her face darken. "If we including last autumn, this should be my 6th month since I've picked up swordsmanship. MF. Although the duration seems to have doubled, Eleanor still felt so sad. She took several deep breaths in succession before she could manage to resist the urge to strike this guy down with her sword. "How many strikes did you manage to do before breaking your stance?" "About 70,000 or 80,000 strikes." Rhodes subconsciously said it with a lower tone, fearing that he will break this beautiful adjutant's will, who he genuinely felt that she was really strong. In fact, he has a very solid foundation now, and according to Jun's validation, he is already qualified. Looking at Rhodes, who said these words in a very low tone, Eleanor suddenly had the urge to abandon swordsmanship and go home to become a farmer. The requirements that Jun's put isn't reasonable actually. It is difficult for ordinary swordsmen to do 70,000 or 80,000 strikes without breaking their stance. Even Eleanor herself is only a little better than this. Without saying a word, she sorted out her torn clothes, turned around, and left in a sullen mood. The swordsmanship spare ends after taking 1 point, and if they continue, it will be a life and death battle. It's strange. Rhodes shook his head and continued to practice swordsmanship. The mastery of basic swordsmanship is quite mature, and it is necessary to start the road of fusion and play, that is, the road of creating swordsmanship. The lightning sword style smite used by Rhodes before is a sword move derived from his understanding of strike in swordsmanship. It maximizes the explosive arm strength and the slash intensity is extremely high. It is a relatively popular sword move, but everyone uses it differently. Eleanor's secret sword, Swallow, should be a derivative of turning around and stabbing, and there are many small details contained in it, which are relatively more complicated. Rhodes himself doesn't like fancy sword moves very much. Aided by the unique power of thunder, his swordsmanship is known for its swiftness and sharpness. This is enough to kill opponents with a single sword. There is no need to spend brain cells thinking of fancy names. Like the eagle's eye, the swordsman's true pursuit is to cut off the iceberg with a single strike. Thinking of next year's top battle with some emotion, Rhodes became more and more focused on his practice. He's still far from that level.